What's up everyone? Welcome. This is the entire Lost Locations Iceberg. In this series we go through tons of mysterious and lost locations, from well-known places like Area 51 and the Bermuda Triangle to the more mysterious like a valley where men tend to disappear, or a forest that is said to be inhabited by giants. Now, a bunch of these were my first ever YouTube videos, so the quality is kind of for the first few parts, and I totally get if you want to kind of like skip those. So I'm putting a bunch of timestamps below, and I'm going to separate them by each tier in case there's like certain ones that you actually want to go and peep. But other than that, I appreciate all the love and support I've been getting on everything since I started, and thank you guys for watching. So let's get into it. Yeah, we're just going to start right off, you feel me? Number one, first thing on the tier list is Pompeii. Pompeii is it was an Italian city way back when in 79 AD. You know what I mean? Like real early on. And basically it was like a bustling city, you feel me? It was like a regular city back then. But the reason why it was so famous is because it got destroyed basically by Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. The volcano, you know what I mean, it erupted, kind of destroyed a lot of it, but the volcanic ash is really what did its deal, you feel me? Volcanic ash came in and basically covered the entire city, you feel me? Blanketed that thing and froze people, the buildings, it froze everything just in time, you know what I mean? Anything that was caught in it. I remember seeing pictures in high school, or I think it was high school to be honest, not middle school, but I remember seeing people like pictures of people holding hands, you know what I mean? Like they're mummified, just like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's not even like a skeleton. It's just like a mummified person, you know what I mean? Holding hands, hugging. And that's like, you know what I mean? They froze in a time like that, bro. It's just kind of crazy, to be honest with you. But yeah, other than that, it wasn't really much information. I was assuming that was really all the information that they were going to put out for this one, for like the mysterious, just because like, oh, they don't really know too much from before. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyways, moving on. Second one on this list is El Dorado. El Dorado honestly had like almost nothing on it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I could not find anything. It's probably just because they haven't found it. They don't even really know if it's a real thing, you know what I mean? Basically, El Dorado itself is Spanish for the golden one, and it's known as the city made of gold, you know what I mean? If you ever seen the Disney movie, I think it's a Disney movie. Fire movie, by the way. Def underrated. That, Treasure Planet, this is her third one I can't think of, but absolute fire movies, to be honest with you. That's the best thing I could think even El Dorado is, you know what I mean? I got a little bit of information right here. Basically it says that the only place that is actually believed to have been like the place that people think it's at is basically somewhere around like Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil, you know what I mean? Third thing on this list is Pangea. I'm assuming most people have heard of Pangea. It's basically what the world was before continental drift and all the like actual continents kind of like spread apart and everything, tectonic plates, all that bullshit. But basically, yeah, the first time it was ever theorized, it was theorized by Alfred Wagner in the earliest 20th century. And basically he came up with that whole thing of tectonic shift, like continental drift, tectonic plates moving and everything like that, shifting it. And the only other real thing I could see on it was that people think that dinosaurs were walking around on Pangea. So that's pretty lit, you know what I mean? Dinosaurs is fire. Fourth one is the Bermuda Triangle. It's like another one that I feel like everybody's heard of, something at least of it. But Bermuda Triangle is also known as the Devil's Triangle, and basically it's known for like, bro, every conspiracy theory you can even think of, you know what I mean? Aliens, planes disappearing, you know what I mean? I've heard things like the Malaysia flight disappeared once it hit there. Just a ton of different shit, you know what I mean? Radios like not working, like tons of different electrical equipment kind of thing not working. So who really knows what's going on over there? But basically here I got like a little like excerpt of a specific, very specific one, which I thought was super weird. And basically it's about the HMS Atlanta. And basically this wasn't even just like a regular ship, you know what I mean? This is like a big ass ship, bro. Like this thing is carrying almost 300 people. Like this thing is ready, cuz this thing is about its business, you feel me? And basically this thing, when it left, they were leaving, I think they were leaving Cuba, or they were leaving the Caribbean, they were heading somewhere else, but basically they passed through it. there was warnings that it was like storming out and everything like that, but tons of other ships were already making this same journey, you feel me? And basically it just disappeared off the, like, you know what I mean? It disappeared. No survivors, no traces of the boat, no like fragments, broken pieces of it, like something that it like actually crashed. And which was weird at the time, because basically any other time that ship had wrecked or something like that had happened, they had always found either survivors or bodies, you know what I mean, or they'd at least found some kind of wreckage. And this one just straight disappeared. 290 people disappeared, like gone. And basically they just chalked it up to saying that it was a storm and crash, because they didn't have any other explanation. So make that what you will, you feel me? Maybe they just disappeared, maybe they teleported, different dimensions, who knows, cuz, you feel me? Only they know. But anyways, we're moving on, you feel me? Easter Island is next. Easter Island is weird to me, because it's like, I thought this was also the place with the giant pots. I don't think it is. This is the place specifically with the Easter Island head statues. Basically, if you haven't seen them, they're like 13-foot tall statues of just giant skinny tall heads, you feel me? Big craniums. That's it. There's about almost 900 of these things, bro, just spread around the entire island. I know when I watched Wendigoon's whole conspiracy thing, there was one in there that the heads are actually caskets, you know what I mean? Like a mummy kind of shell. That would be crazy, because I ain't gonna lie, bro. I do believe in giants. I ain't even gonna lie to you, bro. I don't think you can change my mind for real. Giants, they real. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I'm just waiting to see one myself, bro. No bullshit. But yeah, basically that's it, you know what I mean? It's just a random island, like hundreds of these things, bro. Like not just a couple, hundreds of these big ass things, you feel me? Like you can't even see my hand, bro. Tall as hell, bro. You feel me? Like these things are more than double me. You feel me? Like 13 feet tall. Oh my god, I can't even think of that. But next thing on this list is Stonehenge. Stonehenge is something I feel like I've always heard about, but at the same time I maybe only heard of once for real, and then I just like have seen about it, seen it in games, seen it in random shit like that, you know what I mean? But basically the whole significance of it is broken down into literally one sentence. I'm gonna read it right here. Stonehenge is the most architecturally sophisticated and only surviving lintelled stone circle in the world. That's it. That's what's like, they just can't understand how people put this thing together back then. You know what I mean? It supposedly was built by the Druids, which are like high priests of the Celts and everything, and supposedly it was for like sacrificial purposes, but who knows, you know what I mean? I ain't one of them, they ain't one of me. I don't know nobody like that, so to most people it's just a mystery. We don't really know. And basically John Aubrey was the first person who ended up linking Stonehenge to the Druids and stuff like that, but never been confirmed, so make that what you will. Chernobyl exclusion zone, to be specific, to be honest. Now this one is a little weird, to be real with you, because like Chernobyl itself is like still a weird spot. I'm pretty sure it's still super radioactive, like nobody lives there still, you know what I mean? You can't even really go there unless I'm pretty sure you have to get like a specific tour guide. I'm sure you have to probably get government approval to even go there, to be honest with you. But basically on April 26, 1986, the number 4 RBMK reactor at the nuclear power plant at Chernobyl, Ukraine went out of control during a test at low power. When that happened, basically the reactor had a meltdown, you know what I mean? And it started releasing all this radiated shit in the air, you know what I mean? Basically when it exploded, it released, I got it right here, it released tons of radiation into the atmosphere, but it also at the same time created the elephant's foot. I'm gonna put a picture up right here if I can find one. The elephant's foot is like, how do I even describe it? It's like a blob. It's literally like an elephant's foot. I guess that's the best way to describe it. You know what I mean? Why am I doing a harder job than they did? But you feel me? It's literally like this giant ass blob of like
melted radiated material. Like, it says it's got uranium, titanium, zirconium, magnesium, and graphite just melted and fused together in this big ass like blob. It's not even a blob, it literally does look like an elephant's foot, you know what I mean? It's got like the whole cuts and everything, but literally when they saw this thing, they didn't even realize how dangerous it was, you know what I mean? These people, when they first saw it, they just walked in like, oh shit, what the hell is that thing, you know what I mean? Apparently they started shooting at it with the AK, with the armor piercing rounds, you know what I mean? And that's the only thing that they like figured was even doing any damage to it at the time. But what are they gonna do, just sit there all day, spray it? No. So basically they just left it alone, you know what I mean? Moved everybody away from it, say, yo, listen, this is an exclusion zone, cuz, you feel me? You ain't allowed over here no more. Nobody's allowed over here. But apparently, as of 2021, the mass has been described to have a consistency similar to sand. Excuse me. And apparently the radiation is slowly going down. At first, you would die within about 2 minutes. You would get so much radiation in you that you would die. I think it was actually even less than that, now that I'm saying it. I think it was literally like 30 seconds. Enough radiation to just, you know what I mean, cause you to die. But after 5 minutes of exposure, even just in the room, you were basically guaranteed to have cancer or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, you were getting sick and you were probably gonna die, is how this thing worked, you know what I mean? It's like so much radiation, I don't even know how else to describe it other than that, you know what I mean? You couldn't even walk through enough radiation if you was trying to, basically, here, you feel me? Like, this place is crazy. So next on this list, probably one of the most frightening ones when I really think about it, is the Marianas Trench, or Marianas Trench, you know what I mean? I just know it's not the Marianas Trench, you feel me? But this is the deepest trench in the whole world so far, you know what I mean, that they've figured out so far. I know a lot of our oceans like unexplored, at least probably like still 90% of it, I would say, is unexplored. So I'm not gonna put a definitive fact on that, but that's what they say so far. So basically, yeah, it's literally just a giant gorge in the Western Pacific Ocean. It's about 200 kilometers east of the Mariana Islands, which is where it gets its name, you know what I mean? It's the closest thing to it. But basically, it's about 35,000 feet deep. Almost like a little under 36,000, to be honest. I'm being generous. I'm taking off some. But it's a little under 36,000 feet. And basically, no one had really explored this. Yeah, the Chinese actually literally had just gotten to it November 2020. You know what I mean? They reached the bottom of it. 10,909 meters to be exact, which equals out to 35,791 feet. Holy shit, that's deep, bro. I don't even go in the ocean, cause like I ain't going to the beach. You maybe could catch me at a beach. I ain't going to no water. Catch me at a pool, bro. If you got a pool, hit me up. I'm sliding through your crib out somewhere, for real. Next up on the list, though, you feel me? Alcatraz. Alcatraz is, I think it's one of the oldest prisons. Nowadays it's just like it's like a tourist place, but before it was a prison, and it's right off of the coast of California. And basically the prison was known for being like basically super secure, you know what I mean? It's in the ocean. You gotta, if you're trying to escape, you gotta literally climb off this island first off. You gotta escape the jail. You gotta try to swim across the ocean to get back home, which is a whole nother thing in itself. And then once you're back home, like, you're still on the run, you know what I mean? So you gotta try to survive off of that. So basically, in its 30-year history, only 3 people successfully escaped. Okay, they had around 30 attempts. It was 36 attempts. 23 of them were caught, 6 were shot and killed. The other ones drowned, except for 3 of them. The 3, I'm gonna put up a picture right here, because that's some boss shit, you feel me? They deserve the picture up here. Frank Moores, John Anglin, and his brother Clarence Anglin. The 3 guys, the only ones to ever escape Alcatraz and survive. Like, congratulations, boys. You deserve that shit, no lie. If you got away with that, I can't believe it, you feel me? Now, next up on this list, probably something I don't know if I'll dive deeper into it, to be honest with you. There's just so much information. There's no way I was going to be able to put all of it on it, you know what I mean? But it's Area 51. Area 51 is technically it's a military base. It's in Nevada, in the desert, and basically the whole mysterious thing around it is because it's believed that that's where they keep aliens, alien UFO wreckage, all that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've heard about it. If you found this video, I'm 1,000,000% sure you've heard of Area 51. So I ain't really too worried about it. But basically, it's mainly used to like test weapons and test like stealth bombers, new aircrafts, all that shit. But what's really interesting is, you've probably seen the Joe Rogan thing with Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar was a guy that worked there. And he basically, a lot of his claims are pretty crazy. I ain't even gonna lie to you. He claims that they literally work on aliens. You know what I mean? He says that they know that they work on aliens, that they have autopsy photographs. They've seen them themselves, you know what I mean? And literally, like, all of his claims has been discredited. Okay, first off, let's get that clear out of the way. He's been discredited plenty of times, but at the same time, isn't that what they would do? You know what I'm saying? If you've ever seen this conspiracy thing, they always make the guy that seems crazy seem more crazy. So who knows? You know what I mean? I wasn't there. Bob Lazar was there. I'm gonna take his word for now, but at the same time, you know what I mean? Big pinch of salt. We ain't even gonna get out to that. Now, sort of connected, but not the entire same thing, is Roswell. Roswell, New Mexico, is basically, it's a place where apparently a UFO had crashed. You know what I mean? And here, I got a little excerpt for you. It's the Roswell incident is the 1947 recovery of balloon debris from a ranch near Corona, New Mexico, by the United States Army Air Force officers from Roswell Air Force Base. And basically, that was the whole story. It was an air balloon that had crashed over there. The Army just went to go grab it, bring it back. But the whole conspiracy thing is that people think that it's not a hot air balloon, basically, you know what I mean? Obviously, people think it's a UFO, people think it's this, people think it's that. This has been disproven. Like, proven that it was not. It was literally a hot air balloon, okay? It's literally been proven multiple times. In fact, the entire Roswell incident is considered the world's most famous and most exhaustive, oh my God, I can't even say this word, and most exhaustively investigated, most thoroughly debunked UFO claim. So it was a fucking hot air balloon, you know what I mean? I mean, people just got to get over it at some point, you know what I mean? Like, not everything's got to be something crazy, you feel me? Anyways, we're coming up on the end. I got two more things on this list. Second to last is the Egyptian pyramids. The Egyptian pyramids, literally everybody that goes through elementary and middle school should know about them. They're the pyramids built by the Egyptians, you know what I mean? Basically one of the first wonders of the world, you know what I mean? I think it is technically the oldest wonder of the world, but specifically the ones found at Giza and everything are the three that are the wonders of the world. There's technically around 118 identified Egyptian pyramids and more. I don't know if you've seen the video, but they think that they found a few up in Antarctica. Sounds a little sketchy to me, man. I don't know. That shit might be real, bro. Who knows? Maybe people was around on Pangea for real at that point, you feel me? But anyways, yeah, they're known for being like basically like a tomb, you know what I mean? It's supposed to basically be like a ceremonial like burial ground, basically, you know what I mean? For pharaohs, kings, all that shit. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why it's on here, because like people have a good idea of how it was made, but at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, people look at it and they're probably like, okay. All right, yo, back before my camera was cut out. As I was saying, main reason why I think that the pyramids are even on this tier list iceberg thing to begin with is just because a lot of theories, a lot of conspiracy theories or whatever you want to call it, a lot of them say that aliens helped build the pyramids or built them itself or brought them here. There's so many, bro. All of them are coming from ancient aliens, to be honest. I'm gonna put up the guy's picture. You already know his face. I'm sure you're literally pitching the guy's face right now. You feel me? I see it perfectly, so clear in my head right now. I literally see the face, the little dumb face that he makes all the time. You know what I'm talking about? But that guy, he says all the time that aliens built this, aliens built that. The pyramids is one of those things that he always says. So take that if you want to believe him. You feel me? Other than that, I don't know what to tell you, man. Do your own research, whatever. But finishing out this this level of the iceberg, basically it's the Holy Grail location. Now the Holy Grail itself is the cup or the chalice, whatever you want to call it. It's the big pimp cup. Yeah, basically two Spanish historians named Margarita Torres and Jose Ortega del Rio believe that the Holy Grail itself was actually kept inside of another holy object called the Chalice of Dona Urraca. Probably butchered that name. Like, just forgive me, bro. Don't even think twice about my pronunciation, bro. It's horrible. You feel me? My handwriting ain't no better, so trust me. This is as hard as it looks for me, to be real with you. And basically, they believe that the chalice is already found. They think that it's already there, and it's just sitting in this church called Leona's Basilica of Saint Isidore. And that's it. People think that it's been there since the 11th century, man. But at the same time, there's been over 250 claims of it being in tons of other places. Egypt, England, basically all around Europe. Tons of places, bro. So who knows if they really found it or if they just got the best looking one. They're like, yep, this is the one. You feel me? This is it. We got it. This is Jesus' cup, cuz. You feel me? $1 million. Put this in your thing. But yeah, basically that's the end of this level. First one on this tier is the US Route 50 in Nevada specifically, and to be honest, this one's pretty whack. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, it's just a highway, extends from Sacramento, California, and it goes all the way to Ocean City, Maryland. And basically there's literally nothing special about this highway. It's just a highway, you know what I mean? But the part that goes through Las Vegas is just considered the loneliest road in America, and that's it. That's the whole thing. Literally couldn't find anything else on it. Couldn't find any like weird shit about it or anything like that. So that's about it. I'm moving on to the second thing though. Second thing is the door to hell, or it's also known as the Darvaza Gas Crater. And basically what it was like these Russians had found it near Darvaza, Turkmenistan, and basically it's like they thought it was an oil field, you know what I mean, where they could get like gasoline and oil and stuff like that. But basically when they started to dig, it collapsed and it ended up becoming what this is, you know what I mean. Nobody got hurt in it, you know what I mean. No one got hurt once it collapsed or anything like that. But yeah, it just constantly burns and everything like that because it's a natural gas crater. So that's pretty cool. The pictures are pretty sick. I mean, that's about it for that. But moving on to the third thing. So the third thing is the tombs of Jesus, and basically there's a few of them. There's only really 3 that I could find that people like really backed, but there was a lot of claims of this. So basically I got 3 examples. First one is called the Talpiot family tomb. Talpiot family tomb, it's located about 5 kilometers. I don't know exactly what that translates to miles. Yeah, basically it was about 5 kilometers south of Jerusalem, and basically it was originally found in 1980, but it didn't really get popping until like 2007 when the Discovery Channel made a documentary called The Tomb of Jesus. And basically the dude that recorded it or produced it was James Cameron, the same guy from the Avatar movies and shit like that. I'm sure you guys know who he is, you know what I mean? But yeah, basically, so that was the first one that people had like really considered it. And the reason why they considered it was that they found these ossuaries, which an ossuary is like, it's like a box. It's almost like a grave, but it's like a box. It can be anything basically. It's a final resting place. And they found a few with the like inscribed with Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But like, you know what I mean? People had pointed out like, bro, like that's not You know what I mean? They weren't in the area where they were actually from. You know what I mean? Like Jesus and stuff wasn't from Jerusalem. They were from Galilee. And basically, yeah, this tomb was in Jerusalem. So people had speculated, like, why would that even be there? You know what I mean? It makes really no sense for them. So that one was kind of dismissed. The second one that I could really find like a decent amount of information on, it's still not a lot, but this one is basically called the Garden Tomb or Gordon's Tomb. And basically this was another possible location for the tomb of Jesus. It was popularized in 1883 by Charles Gordon, hence the name, you know what I mean, Gordon's Tomb. And basically this entire tomb is just like tons of false information used to basically say that this was the place, you know what I mean? They had used basically they used Charles Gordon's belief that Jerusalem represented the shape of a skeleton and that Skull Hill was the head, you know what I mean? And basically another weird thing with some guy named Ron Wyatt, his claim that he found the lost Ark of the Covenant basically nearby, and that was their whole reasoning for this being Jesus' tomb. Literally nothing else. So yeah, they're pretty weird, you feel me? People didn't really believe them. Whatever. We're moving on to the third one though, because this one has got like the most evidence, and basically I had to write down like a decent amount of information on it just so I could make sure, because it seemed like a lot of people at least accept that this is the right one. And basically that is the Church of the Holy Scepter. Now basically it's said that the site with the oldest attestation to being the resting place of Jesus of Nazareth lies within the Church of the Holy Scepter. And basically in his work The Life of Constantine, early Christian writer Eusebius, let me know if I'm saying that right,
Eusebius,
described how the emperor ordered the removal of the pagan temple that Hadrian had built and discovered a tomb beneath. And basically they had built up a church and everything around this. So later on in 2016, basically there was a team of excavators, whatever, that were going to basically clean it up and restore the whole place. And basically they came in and they were removing these limestone tabs from the actual church. And when they did that, they were finding, basically they used these weird techniques called optically stimulated luminescence. And it basically calculates the last time that the quartz sediment was exposed to light. And basically through these tests, they used two separate labs, and they figured out that basically these were coming from about like mid 4th century, which correlates to around the same time where people think that Jesus would have been around. And basically archaeologist John McRae sums it up best. Although absolute proof of the location of Jesus' tomb remains beyond our reach, the archaeological and early literary evidence argues strongly for those who associate it with the Church of the Holy Scepter. So I mean, make of that what you will. Basically this is saying that although they won't ever necessarily be able to fully prove that this was Jesus, this is the place that makes the most sense and has the most proof. So next thing on this list is basically the Very Large Array, or it's also known as the Carl G. Jansky Very Large Array. And basically it's those big ass, looks like satellite dishes, and they basically point out into the sky. And basically what they do is they take pictures and they calculate like black holes and a bunch of other stuff. It says right here, basically the Very Large Array is the most versatile, widely used radio telescope in the world. It can map large-scale structures of gas and molecular clouds and pinpoint ejections of plasma from supermassive black holes. Alright, so next up on the list is the Vatican Secret Archive. And basically it's known today as the Vatican Apostolic whatever, the Vatican Secret Archives is what I'm calling it. It's a central repository in the Vatican City that houses all of the acts disseminated by the Holy See or the See of Rome, which is basically just like when Rome was led by like religion and everything like that. So it's just like, it's basically a lot of documenting and stuff like that, a lot of different stuff. But Basically, it includes state papers, correspondence, account books, and many other documents that the church has accrued over the centuries. Inside the ark, then I have like a few things that are known to be in there. Basically, it's said that if you were a scholar of the church and stuff like that, you could go. And nowadays, it's I think you can literally just sign up and go, but you need to be some type of a scholar or somebody that actually, like, they're just not going to let anybody in there, basically, you know what I mean? You have to be somebody that's obviously, like, going to be respectful. But a few of the examples of things that they have inside there is, inside the archives is information on Galileo's trial, when he questioned the church's views about the Earth's movement and everything like that, because, you know, he said that the Earth, like, revolved around the sun, not that the sun and everything revolved around us.
I think the world isn't flat at all. I think it's round like a ball. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? He said that the world is round. Oh, he's crazy, man.
Inside is also a letter from Mary, Queen of Scots, and basically she was pleading to Pope Sixtus V. Isn't that weird? Sixtus V. But yeah, to basically save her life from execution. And also, last thing in there that I got is it's actually a letter from Henry VIII, and he was basically trying to get him to nullify his marriage so that he could basically marry some other shorty, and he said no. The Pope had said no, so he basically created the Church of England so he could get a divorce. That's that. That's the Vatican Secret Archives. Not much else, because now it's not really so secret. Now most people can just kind of go in there as long as you, like, basically have good intentions and stuff. They have, like, a list. You can go on their website and see what you need to actually be able to go and visit. But yeah, it's pretty sick, I guess. Alright, so next up on this tier is Babylon. Now, Babylon is basically, it's the capital city of the whole Babylonian Empire and everything like that, which was basically big around the Mesopotamian era and stuff like that. And its location was about 60 miles south of Baghdad in what's now modern day Iraq. And basically, they're known for, like, King Nebuchadnezzar. They're really famous for basically, like, developing trigonometry. They use mathematical models to track Jupiter, and basically they developed methods of tracking time that basically we still use today, you know what I mean? And although most of it's all destroyed today, you know what I mean? You can't really find too many ruins of it and everything. In ancient times, the Ziggurat of Etemenanki. I'm not saying that right, but basically, that basically translates to Temple Foundation of Heaven and Earth, which some scholars may believe to be the Tower of Babel. You know what I mean? That's what inspired that whole story. Other than that, couldn't really find too much on it. You know what I mean? There's, like, some information here and there about, like, who they were and how they live, stuff like that. But Babylon is, like, it's pretty well known about, you know what I mean? They knew a decent amount about it, so I didn't really see why it was on here. It's pretty cool though. So moving on to the next thing though, and I'm sure some of you guys have heard about this before. It's the Island of Dolls, basically. Now, the Island of the Dolls is also known as La Isla de la Munesas. Basically, this island is very much connected to a story about a man named Don Julio Santana Barrea. And basically, he was a native of Mexico City. And around the mid-20th century, he basically just dipped from his family. He left. People thought that he basically had, like, a mental break and just dipped, went to this island, you know what I mean? Left them, didn't really say much. But basically, when he got to this island, he had found this young girl, is what he said. He said he found a young girl's body on the island, on the beach, basically, you know what I mean? On the shore of the river kind of thing. And basically, after he found her, that was, like, basically as soon as he got here, you know what I mean? He was in the canal kind of thing of this river, and basically a doll had floated down, and he basically took this doll the first time and had hung it up on a tree to basically, you know what I mean, like, appease the ghost of this, or appears this girl's spirit, you know what I mean, is basically what he was figuring. And then basically, since he was there, he figured, like, oh, $1 isn't enough, you know what I mean? So basically for the next 50 years, he scrounged the rivers, he scrounged trash, he grabbed basically any part of a doll he could find, if he could even find one, you know what I mean? He was picking them up, hanging them up, doing all that stuff. And basically, yeah, around in 2001, this is crazy, all right? In 2001, basically, Don Julian, basically, he passed away, and he had actually been found in the exact same spot where he said he had found the girl. Now, the weird part about the story is that a lot of people debate over whether the girl was even real or not, whether he had actually seen her or whether he had just hallucinated her in this weird like mental state he was in, because a lot of people had figured he had snapped, you know what I mean? And plus, what kind of a sane person spends 50 years of their life just hanging up like fucked up dolls all over the like an island for some ghosts? You know what I mean? So it does make a lot of sense. A lot of people, even his own family, have basically been like, dude, I don't know if this girl was even real that he had seen. Now, the next thing is Transnistria. Now, Transnistria is officially it's officially called the PMR, basically.
Pridnestrovian, Moldavian Republic.
And basically, this place, it's basically like an unrecognized country. You know what I mean? It's an unrecognized breakaway state located in the narrow strip of land between the river Dniester and the Moldavian-Ukrainian border. So, and it's nationally noticed as part of Moldova. And basically it's only recognized as its own country by 3 other countries, which are also countries that aren't recognized as their own countries.
Abkhazia, the Republic of Artsakh, and South Ossetia.
That sounds like a Pokemon, bro. So yeah, but basically Transnistria, they have their own currency, they have their own political system, postal system, their own government, parliament, military. They have all of their own thing, vehicle registration, and basically they even have adapted their own constitution, their flag, a national anthem, and a coat of arms. So they're basically are their own country, just nobody really sees them. Everybody's kind of like, bro, you are not your own country. What is you talking about? But we moving on. Next thing on this list is another thing I'm sure most people have heard about, and this is Jonestown. And basically Jonestown, it was a town run by it was a cult led by Jim Jones. And this guy basically, he wanted to start his own convent, basically his own little town. So they moved to South America. And the whole story is super famous because they all wore the matching tracksuits, the matching Nike Cortez, and they're the ones that drank the punch, you know what I mean? And they all unalived themselves. Y'all know what I mean. But on November 18th, 1978, a total of 918 individuals died in Jonestown, basically. All but 2 from apparent cyanide poisoning. And basically a lot of them were supposedly injected with the cyanide against their will. It was termed the revolutionary unaliving by Jones and his whole people, you know what I mean? But to other people, it was considered a mass murder unaliving, a massacre, or simply a mass murder, basically. And 70 or more individuals at Jonestown were injected with poison, and a third of them were minors. He basically got caught up because he had killed a congressman and other people that had went down there to record a whole documentary about him. Didn't like what was happening because they were trying to help other people escape. And yeah, you know what I mean? Alright, so the next thing on this list is the Chicxulub Crater. And basically what this is supposedly this is the actual crater from the meteorite that had destroyed like the dinosaurs, that basically ended life, or most of life, on Earth about 65 million years ago. And you can't really even see a lot of like the traces of it today, you know what I mean? It's basically been covered up by like actual Earth and all this shit. But it was finally unearthed in 1978 by Glenn Penfield, and he was a geologist who noticed the region's unusual features while working for a Mexican oil company. Why is it a ton of oil company people just discovering these weird shit? And basically, impacts the size of this crater they only hit Earth about every 100 million years. So, next thing is the Catacombs in Paris. Catacombs in Paris, I had known about for a while only because I had seen a movie. I don't remember what the movie was actually called, but yeah, that's how I remember seeing it. But basically what it really was is it's just underground ossuaries, which again is like underground grave sites, or like basically just final resting places for people. And that's all it was, you know what I mean? It's millions of people's bones and just parts of them, you know what I mean? Just underneath Paris as a city. And it's just miles and miles and miles of these bone repositories and stuff. But the weird thing basically is that the guy who created this was Louis Etienne Hericart de Thury. And basically this guy was fucking weird, bro. He started doing a lot of weird shit to the catacombs, which is like basically why they became so much like how they are now, with like the weird setup and stuff like that. This is exactly what he did, okay? So in addition to directing the stacking of skulls and femurs into the patterns seen in the catacombs today, he used the cemetery decorations he could find to complement the walls of bones. He also created a room dedicated to the display of various minerals found underneath Paris, and another showing various skeletal deformities found during the catacombs creations and renovation. He also added these monumental tablets and archways bearing ominous warnings and inscriptions, also adding stone tablets bearing descriptions and other comments about the nature of the ossuary and the catacombs. And yeah, so he would like write these little notes and shit, like these weird little scary notes, like, yo, like, don't come down here, this is what happened here, like, you know, just trying to freak people out that would go down there, which is pretty funny to me, to be honest. Even back then, people was trolling each other. Like, French people, man, who knows? If you French, let me know if you do some shit like this. I hope not, but to each their own, man, you feel me? But up next is Micronesia. Micronesia is basically it's a region that includes about 2,100 islands, and it's got a total land area of about 2,700 kilometers, which is a fuckload, I'm assuming.
It is roughly half the size of Rhode Island.
And basically it consists of tons of islands in the western Pacific Ocean, and it's not really necessarily owned by one specific continent or country, you know what I mean? It's kind of like there's a bunch of different island masses that are split up, and each of those are individually owned by certain things. And yeah, it's just like basically a lot of these little tiny island countries that most people wouldn't even think about most of the time because they're so small and they're just so, like, you know, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. If I don't see it, I'm not thinking about it, you know what I mean? But up next basically is the UVB 76, and it's also known as the Buzzer. And basically, if you've seen Wendigoon's video of the conspiracy theory tier list, I'm pretty sure this is one of the things that's on there. Basically what it is, it's a radio frequency channel kind of thing that just constantly plays out these short wave buzzing noises, and then every once in a while there's a live Russian voice that comes on and just gives these weird decrypted messages. And yeah, basically it's been going on for years, basically since 1982 is when it started. And technically what it actually does is it broadcasts a short monotone buzz noise repeating at a rate of about 25 tones per minute, 24 hours a day. Sometimes the buzzer signal is interrupted and a voice transmission takes place, and basically they're always given by a Russian voice and they're always live messages. And basically this is the weird part. Basically the reason why it's called UVB is basically a mistake. They never actually called themselves UVB. They constantly changed the call sign of the actual radio station, It's used UZB76. It's used a few of them, to be honest with you, but it actually never used UVB. That was like it was like a mistranslation, I guess, you know what I mean, is what you could call it. They just didn't know exactly what it was, and that's just the name that stuck. And I think it's still going. They've never actually figured out where it's coming from or what the reason is. Some people suggest that it's either like a Russian testing thing. Some people think it's like a Russian failsafe, where if this message stops playing for some reason, maybe something happens. But next up is, this one is the Svalbard Global Seed Bank. And basically what it is real. It's a real thing. It's basically, it's a ginormous fucking thing that holds, it's supposed to basically hold all the seeds in the world in case they go extinct. Basically, it's like a last resort kind of thing. You know what I mean? Basically deep inside a mountain on the remote island in the Svalbard archipelago, halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole. Yeah, see, I know it was near the North Pole or something like that. I said Antarctica, but you got what I was saying. Basically lies this thing. And it's a long-term seed storage facility. It's built to stand the test of time and challenge of natural and man-made disasters. Basically, it represents the largest collection of crop diversity in the world. You know what I mean? It's right now, it's got a capacity that stores more than 4.5 million varieties of crops. Each variety on average has 500 seeds on deck, just ready to go. So a maximum of 2.5 billion seeds can be held in this place. You know what I mean? It's kind of just like a last resort in case. I'm glad somebody thought about this, because most of the time I feel like nowadays we don't fucking care. We don't think about that shit at all. But next up is Fort Knox. And this was actually weird to me, because every time I hear about Fort Knox, I was always thinking that this was the place that held all the gold.
Cobalt and iodine? Precisely. Well, if you explode it in Fort Knox, the entire gold supply of the United States will be radioactive for 57 years.
But basically, it's not. It's just a regular army installation in Kentucky. It's south of Louisville, and it's right north of Elizabethtown. And it's adjacent to the United States Bullion Depository, and that's the place that used to hold all the gold reserves. And basically, often these two places are confused for one another, and that's the reason probably why I always thought that Fort Knox was the place that held all the gold. I'm sure mad people heard of that, but I feel like the reason it's on here is just because most people think it is the gold place, you know what I mean? Alright, so as I was saying, second to last thing on this tier, or this half of this thing, is basically the Garden of Gethsemane, I think is how you say it. And basically what it is, it's a garden of great importance to Jesus. Apparently it's the place that he would go for prayers and everything right before he was arrested and crucified. And basically the location was the main thing that I saw was the mystery about it, you know what I mean? There's a few details, like it was a place clothed in olive trees. It's about 200 feet above sea level, and it had a great view of Jerusalem, and not much else is said about it, basically. Up next, the last thing on this half, what it is it's called Salar de Uyuni, and it's in Bolivia. And basically what it is it's just like the largest salt flat in the world, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so hard to describe. It's basically like a prehistoric lake that had dried up, and it just left behind like almost a desert, but it's only salt. So basically around the December to April time of year, when they get their rainy season, there ends up being about like this much water, you know what I mean? Just covering this like ginormous ass sea, basically, you know what I mean? And it's the craziest thing ever. The entire basically thing becomes a giant mirror, and like, oh my god, if you get to see this is something that I plan on seeing in real life at some point. Like, you're looking at it, you don't know if you're looking at the fucking top of the sky, the bottom, or whatever. And basically another cool thing about this is basically at night, on the right nights and stuff like that, this is the only place on earth where you can actually see the rotation of the earth in real time. Like, usually we're so small that we can't tell that the earth is moving like forward and rotating, but at this very specific place, when it is during these months, you can, it's so crazy. It's so fucking crazy. You can literally see it move. I don't know if any of y'all would have seen this, but Will Smith's new Discovery Channel documentary, for some reason I watched it, and that was one of the most crazy fucking things to me, to be honest. He went to this place and it was mind-blowing. Definitely inspired me, to be honest with you. I need to go there at some point in my life. I will most definitely be there at some point before I die. So good looking out, Will Smith. Appreciate you, you feel me? And so let's hop right into it. First one is the Lost Roanoke colony. So basically, the origins of one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries can be traced to August 1587. And basically, I don't know if you guys learned about this back in school, maybe middle school, high school type of time, but it was John White who came over, and he basically was like one of the first governors of the settlers and stuff like that. When they got over here, they landed at Roanoke Island. It's like right off the coast of North Carolina. And basically, after a while, around like where was it? Yeah, 1587, he had like left to go get supplies, you know what I mean, like resupply, went back to England. And basically in the meantime, when he went back, there was Spanish and England, like they had a naval battle, you know what I mean? So he couldn't even go back for a couple of years. By the time he got back over there in 1590, basically, when he landed back, no one was on the island anymore. His wife had disappeared, his daughter, and his granddaughter, who was technically the firstborn person in America. Her name was Virginia Dare, and she was the firstborn child in the Americas. Yeah, but basically the reason why this is like unsolved is they never found the people. The only thing that was left from them was basically it was this wooden post, and inside it was like carved into it. It said Croatoan, which was basically the name of a Native American tribe from around that area. So some of the theories is basically that they had either gotten taken by the tribe or brought into the tribe, or that they had tried to basically sail back, because it had been like 2 or 3 years since he had left, you know what I mean? So people think that maybe they thought he wasn't coming back, so they tried to sail back and they had just gotten lost at sea, you know what I mean? We about to move on. Number 2, this is where I'm about to start messing up words, to be real with you. This one is the Ise Grand Shrine. And basically the Ise Grand Shrine, it's located in Japan, and it's basically, it's like a complex of different shrines, is like the best way I could describe it. It's got 2 main shrines, and then it's like all, you know what I mean, it's like a bunch of shrines located around that same type of area, you feel me? Basically the inner shrine, it's officially known as Kote Jingu, and basically it's located in the town of Ujitachi, south of central Ise, and is dedicated to the worship of Amaterasu. And basically she's the sun goddess. And there's another one, basically it's the outer shrine, and that one is called, where is it, Geku. And basically Geku, it's located about 6 kilometers away, and it's dedicated to Yuki Omikami. He's and they're the god of agriculture, rice harvest, and industry. You know what I mean? And basically, so the entire place, basically, it's really heavily like protected, I would say. You know what I mean? Like civilians and stuff like that, tourists aren't allowed to walk in there and like look around and stuff. You're allowed to walk in like the forest and the walkways around it, but you're actually not allowed in it. And I mean, it's probably just because it's super sacred, you know what I mean? It's like honestly one of the most sacred places in Japan for that reason, so I can understand that. Number 3 is Snake Island in Brazil. Basically, Snake Island in Brazil, it's originally called Ilha da Queimada Grande. Who knows? If you're Brazilian, let me know if I messed that up. But basically, it's an island off the coast of Brazil, and it's in the Atlantic Ocean. And the reason why it's called Snake Island is because obviously there's a ton of snakes, you know what I mean? The island was previously thought to have a population of about 430,000 snakes. And basically the island is also home to a very like almost extinct, you know what I mean, a very rare snake. And basically it's called the golden lancehead pit viper. And there's only said to be about 2,000 to 4,000 of them on this island, and this is like the only place where they really actually are. And they're concentrated mostly inside like the rainforest of the island and stuff like that. Now, since they're like really endangered and they're really venomous,
Basically, the Brazilian government has like blocked off just like civilians from going there, you know what I mean? So it's not like you can really just go there. It's not like a tourist place. But hey man, if you want to go there, I don't know, that's on you, cause I ain't trying to go to no place with no snakes anyway. So you feel me? That's on y'all. But anyways, we're gonna move right on to this next one. Next one is Göbekli Tepe. We're going with that, Göbekli Tepe. And basically what this is, it's a Neolithic archaeological site, and basically it's located in Turkey, and it has it's super fucking old, honestly. That's like literally the only way I can really describe it. It's from around 9500 to 8000 BC, and basically it's comprised of a large number of circular structures supported by massive stone pillars. Technically they're considered the world's oldest known megaliths, and it's also got like quarries, stone cut sisters from the Neolithic age, as well as like some activity from later periods and stuff like that. And it was designated a United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization World Heritage Site in 2018. So basically, you know, I mean, they're still trying to excavate it. They've only, as of 2021, they've like only gotten under 5%. You know what I mean? That's like all they've uncovered from it. So they're still actively digging this thing out. Next one, Aokigahara Forest. Basically, I know you guys have heard about this. This is technically the unalive yourself forest. I would say it, but YouTube is like really weird with that. You know what I mean? Sometimes the like won't push your video out if you actually say the word. But it's very important to Japan because of the whole belief of the Yuri is what they call it, but it's the ghost of the dead basically in Japanese mythology. And at least since the 1960s, the forest has become associated with unaliving yourself, and eventually becoming known in English by the name the forest, you know what I mean, the unalive for yourself forest, and getting a reputation actually as one of the world's most used suicide sites.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
In 2003, 105 bodies were found inside the forest, exceeding the previous record of 78 in 2002. So they had an extra almost 30 people in there after just one whole year. Like, sheesh. Next up on this list are the Albania Bunkers. This one was pretty weird, to be honest, because I don't even think I ever learned about this. I never heard about this ever until I like looked into this. Basically, from the 1960s to the 1980s, Enver Hoxha was he was like the leader of Albania. He basically started a program called bunkerization, which was it was all during like the Cold War and everything like that with Russia. So they started building these like nuclear bunkers basically everywhere, ranging from mountain passes to city streets. They were never used for their intended purposes during the years that that Hoxha governed. Basically, the cost of the construction drained them, basically diverting them away from more pressing needs. Basically, they used this money instead of fixing the roads or instead of like actually building houses for people. They just built these little fucking stupid bunkers. And like by 1983, a total of 173,371 bunkers had been constructed around the country, and they were all just abandoned. Nowadays they're just used as like homeless shelters, or you know, I mean, they use them as like cafes, storage houses, and like random stuff, you know what I mean? Like literally they just built all these things and just wasted all their bread. Like, that's it. They never used them for war. Next thing, this one was honestly pretty stupid. The HAARP base, or HARP base. Basically, I couldn't find much on this, and most of it was literally just like conspiracies about it. Basically, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HARP, is a scientific endeavor aimed at studying the properties and behavior of the ionosphere. Plenty of conspiracies around the base, including the wild speculation that the program is designed to control the weather, or worse. That's really it, you know what I mean? Like, people think that they control the weather, they make the snow, like, I don't know if you guys remember when the fake snow thing was going around, when people were like burning their snow and it was like black. But yeah, basically this is the place where people think that the government controls the weather and all that stuff. But we're moving on. Next is Cat Island in Japan. Cat Island seems lit, you feel me? Like, it's normally known as
Aoshima, and basically it's known for all the cats. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know why that was so hard to get up, but basically they outnumber the humans in a ratio about 36-1 nowadays. Before, when they first brought the cats onto the island to basically stop all of the like rodents and stuff like that, they were averaged like they beat out the humans 6-1. But ever since then, the people on the island, there's not been like many people moving there, so they're all really old age and they started to, like, you know what I mean, pass away. But the cats kept on reproducing. Anyways, yeah, that's really it. Basically, the population around 2015, 2018, they were around 120, 130 cats. And then basically around February of 2018, they started to spade and neuter all the cats so that they wouldn't just constantly reproduce and they wouldn't just like basically overpower everything on this island, you know what I mean? By October of 2018, 210 of the cats had been fixed, and there's only an estimated 10 cats that were uncaptured, basically. Alright, next up is the Statue of Unity. So the Statue of Unity is a statue of an Indian statesman and independent activist. Oh, here it comes. Vallabhbhai Patel. You feel me? We're going with that. He was the first deputy prime minister and home prime minister of the independent India when they actually like gained their independence. And basically he was like a friend to Gandhi. You know what I mean? So basically he was super highly respected for his leadership in uniting the 562 princely states of India. Basically they formed the statue because of him, because of his leadership, because he was super well respected. And it's still the world's tallest statue. It stands at about 600 feet, 597 to be exact. It's located in Gujarat, India, on the Narmada River, and it faces the Sadar Dam, basically. Next up, this one was kind of weird. This one is the Crooked Forest. Now, the Crooked Forest, it's literally just what the name says. You know what I mean? It's a forest with a bunch of crooked ass trees. And it's in Poland, you know what I mean? There's about 400 trees in it, and they all have this very weird shape where it kind of just curves and cuts directly, you know what I mean? And a lot of people think that it's done by somebody. Like, a lot of people just think that people planted them and tilted them that way, like with a specific tool, but they've never actually figured out the way that they would have done that. Some other people say that it's just the wind is mad strong, and bro, like, I don't know what fucking wind they're talking about, bro. The wind outside my crib don't be bending my trees like this, you feel me? So up next is the Death Valley National Park. And basically the Death Valley National Park is the largest national park south of Alaska, and it's really popular because it has these sailing stones. That's literally the main thing I could get out of it, besides the fact that it gets like up to 130 degrees there sometimes, but that's just like Nevada, bro. And the sailing stones, they're basically like these rocks that just get pushed in, like, with the wind. It's so weird. But yeah, they make these big ass lines going through the desert, and that's literally why they're called sailing stones, because the wind moves them and they sail along, you feel me? So not much other than that. Next up is on the iceberg, this thing said Fukushima I or I. Now I didn't know if this was talking about the Fukushima plant that actually, like, you know what I mean, the nuclear meltdown that happened in 2011. That's the one I did. But there was also another Fukushima thing that had popped up, so I wasn't sure which one. I just went with the Fukushima that happened in 2011. So that's where we're going. If not, I might hit up the guy who created this on Reddit and see if that was the wrong one or not, and if it is, I'll put it into the next part, so just to make sure I cover like all the bases, you feel me? Alright, so Fukushima was a 2011 nuclear accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Okuma, Fukushima, Japan. The approximate cause of the disaster was a 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami that occurred March 11th, 2011. It was the most severe nuclear accident since the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. It was classified as level 7 on the International Nuclear Events Scale, or INES. Basically, they're the people that like determine what scale, like, but after they basically looked at it, they moved it up to a classification 7, which is the same exact thing as the Chernobyl, and it's been the only two that have been actually like the nuclear disasters that hit level 7. So the accident was triggered by the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami on Friday 11th March 2011. On detecting the earthquake, the active reactors automatically shut down the normal power generating fission reactors. Because of these shutdowns and other electrical grid supply problems, the reactors' electricity supply failed and their emergency diesel generators automatically started. These were required to provide the electrical power to the pumps that circulated coolant through the reactor's cores. This continued circulation was vital to remove residual decay heat, basically, which continues to be produced after the fission had ceased. However, the earthquake had also generated a tsunami, which was 46 feet high, and basically these waves had swept over the plant's seawall, flooded the lower parts of the reactors, and basically the flooding had caused the failure of the emergency reactors and the loss of the power to the circulating pumps. And basically this led to 3 of the nuclear heads melting down, you know what I mean? 3 hydrogen explosions and the release of radioactive contaminations in the units, and basically they all flooded into the ocean, and there was that whole big disaster and the whole big Fukushima cleanup. I remember they sent like National Guard and everything. That was a whole big thing back then. I remember seeing that on the news, and I was damn. Alright, so like I was saying, up next is the North Sentinel Island. Now, North Sentinel Island, it's basically it's an island of the Sentinelese. Basically, it's located right in the Bay of Bengal, right outside of India. And they're people that basically, they have just stayed on this island by themselves, to themselves, since they got there, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? They're completely cut off from outside society, basically the entire outside world. You know what I mean? Don't use modern medicine, any modern technologies. They're literally just, you know what I mean? I don't know how to put it. They're just like, they're not caught up to the rest of the world, basically, you know what I mean? And that's how they like it. They don't want to be interacted with. At this point, you really can't, because they actually have no immunities to the diseases we have today's. You know what I mean? Like, they have no vaccines, no modern medicine, no antibodies in their actual bodies to help fight off diseases that we fight off regularly. So they're basically protected by the Indian government for that. The area is controlled by the Indian Navy. Basically, they're known for killing people that have gone to the island. I remember hearing about the reporter, news guy. He tried to show up to the island and they sniped him with the fucking bow and arrow. You know what I mean? Caught that quick headshot. Their population is estimated to be between 50 and 400 people. That was in 2012. Now, who knows? Because at this point, how I see it is like they've been alone on that place for who knows how long. I'm sure like inbreeding and stuff may become a problem at some point. So I don't know if this has gone down or has jumped up since 2012. You know what I mean? That's the latest report I could find. But basically, what also is really weird about the North Sentinel Island is supposedly it's the place where Michael Rockefeller had disappeared at. And if you know about the Rockefellers, they're like one of the most richest people. Like all the conspiracies go against them being like the elites of the world and all that shit. You know what I mean? His son is apparently the guy. He had disappeared here. You know what I mean? He like ran away, disappeared, and supposedly this was the last place that people had saw, and they said that they had eaten him. But there's also a picture of a white guy on the island in like their tribal like get up kind of thing. So who knows, you know what I mean? Maybe he just joined them. That mystery is still a whole another mystery in itself, you know what I mean? So next thing is Christ the Abyss. Christ the Abyss, I knew I had seen this in a show. It's a 9-foot tall statue of Jesus, you know what I mean? It was made by Guido Galletti, and it's in honor to Dario Gonzat, and he was the first Italian to use scuba diving gear. The original one is placed in the Mediterranean Sea, right off of San Frutuoso, and there's a few other ones spread throughout the world, you know what I mean? There's one in Grenada off the coast of St. George's, and there's one off the coast of Key Largo in Florida. And they're literally just these fucking kind of creepy ass Jesus statues that are just placed in the water. kind of weird. So I see why people I see why it's on this list, but I mean, the guy literally just made them, you know what I mean? He placed them around because people fucked with them. So next up, I think this is how I say it, Hagar Kim or Quim. I'm not really sure. It's with a Q. So it's basically a megalithic temple complex found on the Mediterranean island of Malta. It's dating from the Gatija phase from around 3600 to 3200 BC, basically. They're among the most ancient religious sites on Earth. And that's about it. You know what I mean? It's also home to the statue of the Venus statues, which people like, they're like the pregnant lady statues is basically what it looks like. It looks like just a pregnant body, which most people just represent as fertility, you know what I mean? So not much there, to be honest with you. I couldn't really find any information other than this. Second to last on this is the Nazca Lines in Peru. This one is definitely some weirdo shit you'd probably seen on fucking Ancient Aliens, to be real with you. Basically, they're a group of geoglyphs made in the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. And they were created around 500 BC and like 500 AD, you know what I mean? Like, so within like 1,000 years they were being made. And they would be made by people making depressions on the desert floor, and they would just like take out the pebbles and stuff and leave like the different colored gravel or dirt, whatever, you know what I mean? They would leave that exposed underneath whatever they were kind of digging up. Up to 2020, they had found between 80 and 100 new figures with the use of drones, and archaeologists believe that there's fucking way more of these to be found. They already found around 100 of these things. Different figures, different shapes representing like animals, plants, just like different kind of weird fucking shapes that they didn't put names on. Who knows, you know what I mean? But basically, the main idea of why they made these in the first place was either just to like be a religious thing, like praise God, or like so they could be seen by fucking, like I said, the ancient aliens, you know what I mean? They say deities in the sky, but we all know they probably think of fucking aliens on Ancient Aliens. So now this last thing, I'm not gonna go in depth at all, really. I'm gonna give like a super brief thing, because at some point I want to go like super into this and make like, I don't know, a long ass fucking video trying to break down all the ideas, because this is something that, I don't know, it wouldn't be the craziest thing I would ever hear, you feel me? But the last place is Agartha, and basically Agartha is a legendary city, or it's like, I wouldn't even consider it a city. They called it a city when I was looking this up everywhere, but I just considered it like the world underneath Earth, basically. It's like, it's really related to the hollow earth theory, if you've ever heard of that. It's basically like, it's not like flat earth, but it's more like the earth is a rock and it's hollow, you feel me? And inside the earth, when you go down enough, gravity basically flips and it's like a whole another world and shit. How I picture it is like fucking Lord of the Rings, basically, you know what I mean? Or like, yeah, basically like that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to fucking describe it. I picture it like that weird shit, but said to be home to like giants and all this other crazy shit. But basically, you've probably, if you haven't heard of it by the name of Agartha, you might have heard of it from like other ethnicities calling it different names, because it's also called Shambhala, it's called Shangri-La. It's got a few different names, but it's basically like a place that's known for being underneath the earth. And supposedly there's entrances in like Antarctica and stuff like that. Real crazy shit. So I'm not gonna break down that one, to be honest with you, because I really want to make a different video on that. First one is the Pine Gap, Australia base. So Pine Gap is just a commonly used name for a joint US and Australia satellite surveillance base, basically. And it's located in central Australia. Now the location is super important, because basically where the base is set is it's too far inland for like other countries' spy ships that are passing through international waters to actually intercept its signal. But it's also important because the US spy satellites that be flying over very important areas such as the Asian parts of Russia, China, and the Middle East, so they can intercept messages from all over there. But yeah, basically back on July 11, 2013, if you remember this guy, Edward Snowden, he basically revealed documents that said that Pine Gap, along with a few other bases in Australia, were basically spying on citizens in Australia, basically everywhere. Listen to your text messages, your phone calls, reading your emails and your faxes. So it's pretty sketchy. You guys were basically scumbags, and Edward Snowden put that on the map, let people know. And that's why he was on the FBI wanted list, I'm pretty sure. I remember he ran to Japan or China, one of the Asian countries. I remember he went over there, hearing about that. So, but yeah. Next up, we're going to do the Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones is kind of a weird one, because I didn't even realize this was in the United States. Like, basically, what the Georgia Guidestones are is it's this giant granite monument. It consists of about 4... How can I explain this right? Basically, it's 1 in the middle and it's 4 around it. So it's like a square around it, and it also has a top. And there's another piece kind of off to the side that has another message. But what's weird about it is that inscribed in this is basically not commandments, but it's like what are they called? Like guidelines is basically the best way to describe it. They're like 10 guidelines for humanity, and it's inscribed in 8 like of today's languages and 4 ancient languages. So number 1 is maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Number 2 is guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Number 3 is unite humanity with a living new language. Number 4 is rule passion, faith, tradition, and all other things with tempered reason. Number 5, protect people and nations with fair law and just courts. Number 6 is let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Number 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. Number 8, balance personal rights with social duties. Number 9 is prize truth, beauty, love, and seeking harmony with the infinite. And number 10 is be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature, leave room for nature. So, I don't know. This guy seems a little whacked out, because if you read the first one, maintain humanity under 500 million, bro, we passed that so long ago. I think we're about to be at like 8 billion on the whole planet. That's just what's counted. So, give or take a lot. And yeah, we ain't doing none of this shit. I mean, maybe only number 7. Nah, not even number 7.
Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind?
We on to the next one. All right, so next up is The Man from Torrid. And The Man from Torrid is basically a story about a guy back in the 1950s who shows up to the Tokyo airport. He's arriving in Tokyo, and basically he's getting his passport stamped and all that stuff. And when they go to check it, they notice that his passport's a little weird, because it's saying that he's coming from a made-up country called Torrid. And basically everything else about the passport is like smooth, you know what I mean? He's already got like a bunch of other stamps from different countries. He has previous stamps from Tokyo also, showing that he's already been there. And they want to hold him overnight for questioning, you know what I mean? They keep on trying to question him, and he just stops talking altogether. He doesn't say anything to them. So they leave him in this hotel room. They leave 2 guards there, and when they come back in the morning, he's gone. And that was it. They never seen him again. Apparently, an original report of the story reveals that the man was in fact called John Ziguris. He was a real person detained in 1960 in Japan for alleged document fabrication. But other than that, I really couldn't find too much. It's basically like a legend, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, take with that what you will. Up next is the Denver airport conspiracies. This one I'm not going to get super into either, because this one has so many different things, and a lot of them are just debunked at this point. The weirdest part about the Denver airport is basically the fact that they have this giant blue horse statue with red eyes, and it's called Lucifer. And basically when it was being built, the guy who actually made it got killed by the head falling off and crushing him. So I don't know, I'm not really a religious person, but a blue fucking unicorn horse thing with red eyes, like, and that thing kills you, yikes, my guy. Yeah, other than that, I mean, there's a lot of weird things with the layout. The layout shows a really big underground, basically passageways, a bunch of hallways and stuff underground that actually aren't accessible. And there's a lot of weird art, a lot of weird paintings and stuff located around that people just think is weird, and it just sparks a lot of conspiracy theories. But you can dive into that one yourself if you want to. I didn't really find it like too crazy. The best thing was literally the Lucifer thing. So anyways, we're moving on. Next up is the tungsten event. I didn't know about this one at all, and I guess it's a little weird, but basically the tungsten event was a 12 megaton explosion that occurred near the Padocamania. We're moving on from the names, bro. Names is not my strong suit. But anyways, the explosion flattened an estimated 80 million trees over an area of 2,150 square kilometers, which is I guess 830 square miles. I'm American, bro. I don't know all that metric system shit, you know. But the tungsten event, or Tunguska event, is actually like the most recent recorded giant meteoroid hitting Earth, if that makes sense. All right, so up next is the abandoned aqueduct Petrobras. Basically, this thing is located near Sao Paulo in Brazil, and if you see the pictures of it, it looks like just a giant, almost a piece of a highway is what it looks like, just hanging out of the jungle, like the top of the jungle, and then it just disappears right back into it. And what it was supposed to be is, back in the 1950s, basically Brazil was making this big ass transcontinental highway, and the part that was going from Sao Paulo to Rio de Janeiro actually had to be constructed in the jungle, and they didn't want to destroy the actual jungle, so they figured, oh, we'll put it above, you know what I mean, like right above it, so everything, we don't got to fuck with anything other things below it. And basically around the 1970s, they actually started to build this part in the jungle, and the working conditions were horrible. People just were passing out, too hot, it's deep in the jungle, you can't really get supplies there. Like, basically Brazil just ran out of money making this thing. They got about 900 feet deep with it, so it's like 900 feet long, and it's about 130 feet off the ground from the jungle. So this thing is fucking massive, dude. And Brazil's economic crisis basically stopped it. Nobody's ever worked on it since. It's too deep in the jungle, and I just figured people ain't gonna try to do that, you know, maybe one day. But as far as right now, it's not looking like it. But kind of a boring one. Moving on to one that's a little bit cooler, I guess. All right, up next is the real story of the Sword and the Stone. So I'm sure you guys have heard, or at least some of you guys have heard, the story of Excalibur. It's like an old Disney movie, and nobody can pull it out besides like the one prince or the king kind of guy. Well, basically that was all based on this real story. So the real location of the sword is actually, it's in Tuscany. It's in Abbey of Saint Galgano, which is a former Caesarean monastery, and basically now it's just ruins. The story of the story inside the ruins basically shows a knight that turned into a monk, and basically he shoves the sword in the stone, and it's still there to this day. Nobody's gotten it out. So it's a little weird. It's kind of on the head, you know what I mean? So who was this guy, right? His name was Galgano Guidati. He was born in 1148 near Chicxulub, just southwest of Siena, basically Italy. He was a knight, said to have lived a debauched life. Basically, this guy was a fucking asshole. He was probably doing a whole bunch of other scummy shit. But basically, he lived this shitty ass way until about the age 32, when he said that the Archangel Michael basically began appearing in his dreams. And this led him to the site of the visions of the Archangel, like where he was. And basically, to mark the change from his past, because he was changing his ways, he was becoming a monk from this scumbag that he was like changing his whole life around. He stuck the sword in the rock all the way back in around 1180 is when people are guessing. And he promised to God that he would never raise his weapon to anyone again. Recent research has actually proven that the stone and the sword is actually around the dates. It's dated from around 1100s to early 1200s, so the story seems like it could be true. And yeah, I don't really have too many thoughts on that shit. Up next is Centralia. So if you have ever watched horror movies, you've seen probably Silent Hill. I'm sure most of us have. That is the place. This is the place that's based on, basically, how all the smoke is constantly coming up. And basically this place is in Pennsylvania, and it's got these mines. They used to have these mines, I should say. And basically there was a fire that had caught in the mines, and it's still burning to this day. You can drive through there, there's smoke rising all over the place. It basically got shut down. In 2002, they discontinued the zip code, the postal service, and basically they said that after 2002, anybody who lives there can choose to just live out the rest of their life there, but nobody else can actually move and live in there. And now the place is just basically a dead zone. So up next is the Veravokina Cave. Basically, the easiest way to put this one is it's just the deepest cave on Earth so far that's been found. It's about 7,257 feet deep. And the weirdest thing I could find about this one was back in August 2021, the Perovo expedition. They found a body of a tourist at negative 3,600 feet. He was later identified as Sergei Kozev, who was a Russian. He left his home on the 1st of November 2020, and he started descending into the cave. Basically, he made it to about negative 2,000 feet where he set up like permanent kind of camp, and then he continued to descend where he got down to 3,600 feet, negative 3,600 feet I should say, and he got stuck because he just didn't have the skills, he didn't have the right equipment, and he just passed away down there, and he died of hypothermia technically. And that was it. Moving on to the next one. So up next is the Flannel Isles Lighthouse. Basically, this is a lighthouse that is on Ellie Moor. It's one of the Flannel Isles outside of mainland Scotland, and it's really important because the people that were taking care of this lighthouse disappeared. All right. The first time this was noticed that something weird was going on with this place was back on December 15th in 1900, when a steamship that was driving by going from Philadelphia to Leith, they basically noticed that the lighthouse wasn't working, and they didn't have time to really stop by there. So a few weeks later, on December 20th, they had sent out a relief ship going to check on them. They couldn't get there in time because of some like strange weird weather that was happening, and basically it took them a few more days. They got there on the 26th, and when they finally arrived, basically the lighthouse was supposed to be manned by 3 people: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. And basically they had a rotating 4th man who would spend time on shore and, take care of everything else around the place. Now, when the relief crew arrived, they noticed that the flagstaff had no flag. None of the unusual provision boxes had been left on the landing stage for restocking, and more ominously, none of the lighthouse keepers were there to welcome them ashore. So this was weird. There was no boxes because they were supposed to bring them supplies every few weeks or whatever. They show up, there's no boxes to get resupplied, there's no flag, and there's no one to greet them when they actually got there. Jim Harvey, the captain of the Hesperus, which was the relief ship that went over to the island to actually take care of these people and check on them, he attempted to reach them by blowing the ship's whistle and firing a flare to try to tell them, like, yo, the ship is pulling up, like, we here, come get ready, come get your stuff. When that was unsuccessful, basically they launched a boat, and Joseph Moore, who was the actual relief keeper, he was put on shore alone. He found the entrance to the gate to the compound and the main door were both shut. The beds were unmade and the clocks were unwound. When he returned to the landing stage to tell the rest of the crew that he showed up with the bad news, he then went back up to the lighthouse. He went up there with a second mate and a seaman, and basically a further search revealed that the lamps had been cleaned and refilled. A set of oilskins was found, suggesting that one of the keepers had left the lighthouse without them, and there was no sign of any of the keepers, neither inside the lighthouse nor anywhere on the island. Moore and three volunteer seamen were left on the island to attend to the light, and basically the ship left. Captain Harvey sent the telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board dated December 26, 1900, stating, "A dreadful accident has happened to the Flannels. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. The clocks were stopped and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane. No bodies were ever found, but there have been some mysterious sightings resulting in fascinating national speculation. Implausible stories ensued, such as a sea serpent had carried the men away, they had arranged for a ship to take them away and start new lives, they had been abducted by foreign spies, or they had met their fate through the malevolent presence of a boat filled with ghosts." So I guess that's up to you guys to choose. Either they got killed by ghosts, they got taken away by spies, they just got another ship to come pick them up and they just dipped and started new lives, said fuck all y'all. Who really knows, man? I don't know shit. Only they know. Hopefully they Gucci. Alright, so up next is room number 39 in North Korea. It's officially called the Central Committee Bureau 39 of the Workers' Party of Korea. It's basically this secret organization that they try to just keep the money flowing through North Korea and to their leaders. Does that make sense? The organization is estimated to bring in between 500 million and 1 billion, if not more, per year. It's involved in illegal activities such as counterfeiting $100 bills, producing controlled substances, including methamphetamine, and the conversion of morphine containing opium into more potent opiums like heroin. So they're total scumbags. They do international insurance fraud, and it's just like a whole bunch of Korean scumbags, dog.
You suck!
That's the best way to describe it. Like, they sell drugs, they do fraud. Room 39 is the largest of the three influential so-called third floor offices, along with Office 35, which is tasked with intelligence, and Office 38, which handles legal financial activities. Room 39 is to be located, it's believed to be located in a ruling workers' party building in Pyongyang, not far from one of the North Korean leaders' residences. And all three of the offices were initially housed on the third floor of the building where Kim Jong-il's office used to be, hence the moniker third floor. The third floor is basically just the name of all of the organizations, all the rooms, I guess you could call it, like the room 39, 38. It's just all of them. They're all called the third floor. That's like their whole like gang name, I guess, whatever you want to call them. So up next is the Royal Air Force Station Menwith Hill. Basically, it's the same exact thing as Pine Gap. It's the easiest way to put it. It's another surveillance base for satellites. This one is just located in Yorkshire, England. That's about it. I'm not really going to go over the whole thing because if you listen to Pine Gap, it's the exact same thing. This one's just part of NATO and everything like that. So other than that, we're moving on to the next one anyways. I'm not going to waste too much time on that. Next up is 33 Thomas Street. So 33 Thomas Street, it used to be the old AT&T building, is the easiest way. It's a 550-foot tall building, windowless skyscraper. It's in lower Manhattan, and it stands on the east side of Church Street between Thomas Street and Worth Street. The building is an example of the brutalist architectural structure. It is a telephone exchange or wire center building which contained 3 major 4 ESS switches used for interexchange, which is long distance telephoning basically, as well as a number of other switches used for competitive local exchange carrier services. However, it is not used for an incumbent local exchange carrier services and is not a central office. The CLLI code for this facility is NYC-MNYBW. The building has also been described as the likely location of a National Security Agency, or NSA, mass surveillance hub codenamed Titan Point. So what I got from this is basically, it used to be the old AT&T building where they would connect all the wires. If you've ever seen back in the day how they used to connect phone calls and stuff, that's what I'm picturing. But now a lot of people believe that this is where the NSA actually surveils people's, like I was saying with the Pine Gap thing, how they surveil people's like texts, emails, phone calls, and they basically like listen through it all. This is the place where people are thinking this is taking place, which is in New York at the old AT&T building. And that's really it. I mean, nothing's confirmed, so like I said, who knows, you know what I mean? So up next is Dead Vliet. Dead Vliet is a white clay pan inside the Namid Nakhluft Park. Holy fuck, I probably fucked that up. It's in Namibia in Africa, and the real name of it, or what it actually means, is Dead Marsh. Basically, the clay pan came to be when it was formed after rainfall when the Tshab River flooded, creating temporary shallow pools where the abundance of water allowed camel thorn trees to grow. When the climate changed, the trees basically died because the drought hit. The trees basically, they mummified, is the best way to explain it. They dried so much that they don't actually die. They don't fall apart. Basically, when the river got blocked, the trees became these skeletons. They're believed to be about between 600 and 700 years old, and they're now so, like, they're super black. They're just straight black from the sun, like, constantly burning them. It says that technically they're not petrified. The wood does not decompose because it's so dry. So that's why I would picture it being, like, mummified. If you've ever seen, there's a super famous painting where there's, like, a clock dripping off one of these. And I never realized that this was that place until I actually like looked this up until I was doing this video. So that was pretty cool. Second last thing is the Baltic Sea anomaly. This one is pretty fucking weird because it's just this big ass shape that's inside the Baltic Sea that nobody really knows what it is. Basically, it's a feature visible on an indistinct sonar image taken by Peter Lindbergh, Dennis Aberg, and their Swedish team Ocean X. They were this old Swedish diving team. They were treasure hunting on the floor of the northern Baltic Sea at the center of the Gulf of Bothnia in June 2011. The team suggests that their sonar image shows that it's like not natural. It looks really weird. All right, and basically a lot of people thought that this was a UFO, although it's never actually been confirmed. Most people, including scientists and experts, just think that this is just a natural geological formation. But if you're looking at it, it looks pretty fucking creepy. Kind of looks like a spaceship. I can see where they're getting that from, but who knows? I mean, if an alien's smart enough to get here, dude, I don't think they're fucking crashing into our ocean. Like, let's be real. If they're smart enough to fucking space travel and get here, cause you think they're that fucking stupid that they're gonna crash into the thing that takes up 75% of our planet? Like, let's use our brains, people. Come on. Anyways, let's finish this one off. Last up is the roller coaster bridge. Roller coaster bridge. This one is not too crazy, but when you see the videos of it, you definitely see where the name comes from. All right. Basically, it's officially called the Eshima Oashi Bridge. It's also known as roller coaster bridge. Super easy, right? It's a rigid frame bridge that was built in Japan. That it connects Matsu, the Shimane Prefecture, and Sakaminato, the Nakaomi Lake. The bridge is built over the Nakaomi Lake. Let's get that straight. All right. It was built from 1997 to 2004, and it is the largest rigid frame bridge in Japan and the third largest in the world. And basically, the images of the bridge have gone viral basically because it looks like it's fucking twisty and turny. I'll try to throw up a picture or a video or something, so because words don't do it justice. The first one up on this this tier, I guess this half of the tier, is Dairakadosbrook. It's also known as the Devil's Bridge, and basically this bridge, it was built back in 1860. It was commissioned by a local knight, and it was built with a bunch of diverse stones and everything from around that local area. And basically it's been called the Devil's Bridge because of the structure of the actual bridge made it so dangerous that it must have been built by Satan, people said. And I mean, that's really it, you know what I mean? There's nothing much else I could find. I think it's also called the Devil's Bridge because the arch or arc, whatever you want to call it, it forms like a perfect circle in the water, which is pretty sick. But if you look up Devil's Bridge, there's a bunch of them. That's the thing. That's what makes me think that the Devil's Bridge is actually just the whole circle in the water and everything. But pretty sick. I mean, there's a million of these things. If you even look up Devil's Bridge, it pops up with like 30 of them. So there's nothing like too crazy special about this one. But yeah, anyways, we on to the next one. So next up is Unit 731. And bro, before I get into these guys, these people was fucked up, cuz like, bro, no bullshit. Basically, Unit 731 is short for the Manchu Detachment 731, or also known as the Kamo Detachment or the Ishi Unit. They were a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that engaged in lethal human experimentation during the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II. It was responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes committed by the armed forces of Imperial Japan. So yeah, man, these people, they do human experimenting. Trust me, I got a few examples of it, and that shit is fucked up, bro. They routinely conducted tests on human beings who were internally referred to as logs. Additionally, biological weapons were tested in the field on cities and towns in China. Estimates of those killed by Unit 731 in its related programs range up to 500,000 people. So they was killing their own people. They was killing Chinese people. They was just testing on people. They just needed to know shit. You feel me? And yeah, basically subjects were deprived of food and water to determine the length of time until death. They were placed into low pressure chambers until their eyes popped from their sockets. Cuz what? They were experimented on to determine the relationship between temperature, burns, and human survival. They pumped people full of horse blood. They also hung people upside down until they were dead. They crushed people with heavy objects. They electrocuted them. They dehydrated them with hot fans, etc., etc. Tons of fucked up shit, bro. Literally tons of fucked up shit, dude. Like, oh my god, bro. These people, dead ass insane, cuz like dead ass insane. So, while Unit 731 researchers were actually arrested and tried by the Soviet Union after the war, America had a different idea. Basically, Americans did the exact same thing that they did back in Operation Paperclip, where they basically exchanged their freedom to come work for the US government and our biolabs and other shit like that. Our biolabs and other shit like that.
Oh my god!
But anyways, man, we're moving on to the next one. Next one is Lake Hillier. So Lake Hillier is a saline lake at the edge of the middle island. The most notable feature of the lake is its pink vibrant color. The vibrant color is permanent and does not alter when the water is taken in a container. It is due to an organism. It's called Dunlia salina, and there's so many of them that they figure that this is the thing that actually turns the color of the water pink. Pretty sick, but I mean, coming off of that one, I think we just needed a soft one, to be real with you, after all the human torture and shit we just heard about before. So up next is Google Earth and Snow Saddle. So this one I really couldn't find too much out about, to be honest with you, but shout out to the dude, I'm forgetting your name, who actually made the actual original Reddit post.
Rafzalaria.
But he sent me a link that like sort of described what it was, and basically what it was is it's Kantanga, also known as the Snow Saddle. It's a major mountain peak in the Himalayas in Nepal. Its summit rises about 7,000 meters, and it was first climbed in about 1963. And this is one of the most mysterious places to look at from the internet because it's completely blacked out on Google Maps. But I feel like they do that for like certain reasons, for like, you know, government stuff and all that, but like, why the fuck in the mountains, you know what I mean? I guess that is a real random spot just to have. And it is believed the area is pixelated to stop the public from spotting a secret entrance and investigating the area, which is known for a vast number of supposed UFO sightings. Make of that what you will. Alright, so next up on the tier is Rockall. Rockall is an uninhabitable granite islet situated in the North Atlantic Ocean. The United Kingdom, so the UK, claims that Rockall lies within its EEC, or its exclusive economic zone, and is a part of its territory. But this claim is not recognized by the Republic of Ireland. It and nearby skerries of Helen's Reef are the only emergent parts of the Rockall Plateau. When I looked at this, I deadass just saw some fucking rocks standing up out the ocean. Like, next up is the Mapimi Silent Zone. It is the popular name for a desert patch near the Bolson de Mapimi in Durango, Mexico, overlapping the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve. It is the subject of an urban myth that claims it is an area where radio signals and any type of communications cannot be received. In July 1970, on an antenna RTV test rocket launched from the Green River Launch Complex in Utah towards the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, lost control and fell in the Mapimi desert region. When the rocket went off course, it was carrying 2 small containers of cobalt-57, a radioactive element. NASA rocket engineer Werner von Braun was sent to the U.S. to investigate the crash. As a result of the U.S. Air Force recovery operation, a number of myths and legends relating to the area arose. Legends including strange magnetic anomalies that prevent radio transmissions, mutations of flora and fauna, extraterrestrial visitations. The area has been compared to like Bermuda Triangle and Area 51 and all the other places where, like, you know, you drive through and some crazy shit happens with your radio and nothing works, you know what I mean? Like big EMP shit. So who knows? I haven't really heard too much about it. That's actually the first time I heard about it. I heard of like Roswell, Area 51, obviously Bermuda Triangle. This is like just another one of those things that I never heard of though, but pretty interesting. So we moving on. Next up is Sandy Island. So Sandy Island it's basically a non-existent island that was charted for over a century as being located near the French territory of New Caledonian, near the Chesterfield Islands and the Nearest Reef in the Eastern Coral Sea. The island was included on many maps and nautical charts from as early as the late 19th century. It was removed from French hydrographic charts in 1974. The island gained widespread media and public attention in November 2012 when the RV Southern Surveyor, an Australian research ship, passed through the area and undiscovered it. Exactly, like how it took that long. It took that long until 2012 for somebody to just go through and be like, oh wait, this shit ain't even here, cuz what are we doing? But anyways, let me know what you think about that one. We're moving on. Next up is the mystery spot in California. This one was a little weird because at first I had thought that the mystery spot in California was going to be about the fake buildings in California that hide the oil tankers and stuff like that. But this was not this at all, to be honest with you. So, the Mystery Spot in California is a tourist attraction near Santa Cruz, California, opened in 1939 by George Prather. Visitors experience demonstrations that appear to defy gravity on the short but steep uphill walk and inside a wooden building on the site. The Mystery Spot is a gravity hill. Tilt-induced visual illusion, basically, is what a gravity hill is. The illusion experienced by visitors results from the oddly tilted environment as well as standing on a tilted floor. Inside the tilted room of the Mystery Spot, misperceptions of the height and orientation of objects occur. Even when people are standing outside on a level ground, the slant of the building in the background causes misperceptions, as humans judge the height of people using the slant of the roof rather than the true horizon. It's all like a big optical illusion, you know what I mean? And basically, these visual illusions include balls rolling uphill and people leaning farther than normally possible without falling down. Basically, like, if you ever seen Michael Jackson where he did that whole little thing and he, you know, almost touches the ground type thing, this is that whole optical illusion kind of thing going on, but in a building, and they're including you in it, basically. The next one is the Zhangdangnia National Geological Park. We're going with Zhangdang, alright, because that's as close as I'm gonna get to saying it. So, Zhangdangnia is known for the unusual color of rocks, which are smooth, sharp, and several hundred meters tall. They result of deposits of sandstone and other materials that occurred over 24 million years ago. The result, similar to like a layer cake basically, was tilted by the action of the same tectonic plates responsible for creating parts of the Himalayan mountains. Wind, rain, and time then sculpted into extraordinary shapes, including towers, pillars, and ravines with varying colors, patterns, sizes. Realistically, bro, you're just gonna need to see this picture because this shit is beautiful, to be real with you. I get it, it looks crazy, you know what I mean? It has been voted by the Chinese media outlets as one of the most beautiful landforms in China, and listen, I agree. That shit looks crazy. I would love to see that one day. Alright, up next is Adam's Bridge. Also known as Rama's Bridge or Rama Setu, is a chain of natural limestone shoals between Pambam Island, also known as Ramshwar Island. It's off the southeastern coast of Tamil Nadu, India, and Manor Island, and it's close to Sri Lanka also. Geological evidence suggests that this bridge is a former land connection between India and Sri Lanka, and basically it was reportedly passable on foot until the 15th century when storms like deepened the canal and basically just said fuck that, y'all ain't walking this way no more. And basically some of their temples say that the Adams Bridge was entirely above sea level until it broke from a cyclone in 1480. So who knows. Next one is Bermeja. Bermeja or Bermeja is a phantom islet lying off the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula according to several maps of the Gulf of Mexico from the 16th century to the 20th century. Despite being located somewhat precisely in relation to neighboring islands by notable Spanish cartographers of the 16th century, the island was not found in a 1997 survey. Hey, shout out to 1997, bro. If you was born the same year as me, cuz you're a real one. Nor in an extensive 2009 study conducted by the National Autonomous University of Mexico on behalf of the Mexican Chamber of Deputies. Basically, people think that the people that was just doing their jobs back then sucked and did not know what they were seeing. You know what I mean? Or shifts in the geography of the ocean floor, rising sea levels, and conspiracy theories claiming that the CIA destroyed the island to expand the economic zone allotted to the United States. I'm highly doubting the last one is true. I hope not, bro.
You underestimate my power.
Like, oh my god, we already do so much fucked up shit. We're gonna be destroying shit just so we can look better, cuz like come on, bro. We're going on to the next one. Next one is the Sachin Glacier disputes. This one is a little weird because it's more of like a conflict, to be honest. It's not really like a spot, basically. It's a conflict over a spot. Let me put it that way. The Sachin Glacier is a glacier located in the eastern Karakoram range of the Himalayas, where the line of control between India and Pakistan ends, basically. So it's right on this kind of border. It is the longest glacier in the Karakoram and the second longest in the world's non-polar areas. The entire Sachian Glacier, with all major passes, has been under the administration of India since 1984. But both India and Pakistan claim sovereignty over the area to this day, and it still causes issues. I couldn't really find too much else about it. It was just a lot of like, honestly, like geography about the place, but nothing much on the actual like glacier itself. Anyways, next up is Kolmanskop, I think is how I say this. Kolmanskop. Basically, it's a ghost town near southern Namibia. It was known for diamond mining in the early 1900s. And basically, this place was popping. All right, like when they first found a diamond there, it was booming. People showed up, running through this thing, grabbing all the diamonds they can, and then basically around 1930s, really 1928. The town's fate basically was sealed when already the richest people that were mining the diamonds, they found another diamond field a little bit down the road, like, you know what I mean, a few miles later, and basically everybody just got up and dipped. They said, fuck this place, yo, we going to get rich over there because we not staying here. Yeah, literally people left. They left their houses, they left their possessions, they left everything. It's dead ass just a ghost town now, even the pictures today. By 1956, Kolmanskop was completely abandoned, and to this day it's like a tourist spot. You can go there, check it out. Moving on, this is like the third to last thing on here. It's Gunkanjama, also known as Battleship Island. It's an abandoned island off of Nagasaki, lying about 9 miles from the center of the city. It is one of about 505 uninhabited islands in the Nagasaki prefecture. The island's most notable features are its abandoned concrete buildings, undisturbed by nature, and the surrounding seawall. While the island is a symbol of rapid industrialization of Japan, it is also a reminder of Japanese war crimes as a site of forced labor prior to and during the Second World War. Unit 731, cuz there you are again, you fucking fucked up motherfuckers right there.
I'll never forgive the Japanese!
The 16-acre island was known for its undersea coal mines, established in 1887, which operated during the industrialization of Japan. The island reached peak population of 5,259 people in 1959. Then, in 1974, with the coal reserves nearly depleted, the mine was closed and all the residents left the island, basically. And they just kind of left it for 3 decades. It's just abandoned, it's still chilling there. So, we moving on. Second to last one, I'm honestly going to skip. It's Gravity Hill. If you listen to the mystery spot in California, it's literally that, but there's just hundreds of them all over the place. Like I told you, I've definitely been to one, and it was somewhere on the East Coast. It was nowhere near California. But yeah, so them shits is everywhere. Just different optical illusions. Pretty crazy. All right, finally, last up on this list is Club 33 at Disneyland. So Club 33 comprises of a number of private dining clubs located within the various Disney parks. First opening in 1967 inside Disneyland Park, the club was modeled after numerous executive VIP lounges created by the pavilion sponsors in the 1964 New York's World Fair. At the time, Club 33 was the only location within Disney that would serve alcohol. So that was why it was pretty important. Basically, according to Disney, Club 33 is simply named after its address at 33 Royal Street in New Orleans Square in Disneyland. Others speculate that the name is a reference to the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. While there's no concrete evidence to support that Walt Disney himself was a Freemason, there is some supporting evidence of Masonic roots found in the Disney theme parks themselves, such as this prop crate located in Disney World's Magic Kingdom with the inscription H. Abif's Working Tools, a likely reference to Hiram Abif, who is the foundational character of the Freemasonry's ritualistic drama of the third or master's degree. Membership in the club has been exclusive since the very beginning. However, it has been opened to public membership for many years. In fact, in 2007, the waitlist became so long that the club officially closed the waiting list for 5 years before reopening again in 2012. That same year, the reported cost of the membership was around 25 bands, bro. Oh my god, 25 bands, because you know how much going to Disney World already costs, bro? Like,
for you that are watching with no street cred, 25 bands is $25,000.
You're paying 25 bands just to fucking drink drinks at Disney World? You are dumb as shit, bro. What the fuck? You deserve to be in that club, fam. Like, no bullshit. You club of dumb motherfuckers is what I'll call y'all. Plus 10,000 annually for individuals and even more for corporations. So basically, if you in Club 33, you definitely into some shit. You either really got some money or you really a big motherfucking dumbass. Like, there's no way around it, man. Alright, so first up on this is the ADX Florence prison. Basically what this is it's an American federal prison. It's near Florence in Colorado, and what it is it's a supermax prison. If you don't know what that is, it's basically just like more highly regulated, like higher securities and stuff like that, way more guards, less actual like convicts, I guess, felons, whatever you want to say, less people, you know what I mean, less prisoners actually at the prison, you know what I mean, and more guards. And basically this one is really important because it's one of the biggest ones actually in America. This one actually, this Supermax prison, Florence, actually right now holds Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. If you don't know who he is, he's the like alive brother of the Boston bombings. He was supposed to go to, actually, he was supposed to be killed. He was supposed to be sentenced to death, and then his thing got reduced just to life in jail. So he's gonna be spending the rest of his time alive there. And another famous person that's actually locked up there is James Marcello, who's like the front boss for one of the big Chicago mob outfits. He was convicted on racketeering, conspiracy for participating in 18 murders, and directing criminal activities including extortion, illegal gambling, loan sharking, and bribery. Alright, so up next is Bergen City. So basically what this place is it's a mythical city that lies in Philippines, and according to the local folklore, the population of Bergen is comprised of supernatural beings called the Encantos, I think is how you say it. And basically they're described as shape changers who can take human form. In their human form, they are said to lack philtrum between their nose and lips. I'm assuming that's this. So they're like, that's how I'm assuming they look.
Nope. The philtrum, or medial cleft, is a vertical indentation in the middle area of the upper lip, common to Therian mammals. Basically, this thing.
But basically, the city is also alleged to contain a huge like treasure gold. A small number of people claim to have seen the city. Some seafarers have claimed to see a dazzling city of light on moonless nights for a few minutes, and according to folk stories, most of the people who claim to have seen the city have been victim of demon possessions. And basically there were reports of satellite images from a Japanese company that alleged to show brightly lit tracts of land in the region, which led the Japanese to believe that there are rich deposits of gold and uranium in the suspected area. They began work immediately, setting up a large work site in the town of San Jorge. But mysterious accidents and mishaps plagued the project from the start, forcing the Japanese company to shut down operation and abandon the project completely in an effort to avoid bankruptcy and cut their losses. So yeah, it's like a mythical city. It's got like some weird shapeshifter things that look like this, you know what I mean? And other than that, we're moving on. Up next is White's Gentleman Club. This one, I'm not gonna lie, I thought this shit was gonna be sick, and then when I looked it up, bro, it's super boring. Basically, it's just the oldest gentleman's club in London. Come from America, bro, a gentleman's club is like a strip club. So when I heard this is literally just like a club for dudes. Like they just chill and talk about business and weird shit, you know what I mean?
Boring.
It was founded in 1693 and is considered by many to be the most exclusive private club in London. Notable current members include Charles, Prince of Wales, and Prince William, Duke of Cambridge. This fucking guy. Former British Prime Minister David Cameron, whose father Ian Cameron had been the club's chairman, was a member for 15 years but resigned in 2008 over the club declining to admit women into the club. The Whites continued to maintain its tradition as an establishment exclusively for gentlemen. Brief exceptions were made for the visits by Queen Elizabeth II in 1991 and 2016. And that's all I really got for that one. Like I said, it's not that crazy. And yeah, we're just moving on to the next one. So up next is the Ark of the Covenant location. So basically the Ark of the Covenant location is, the Ark of the Covenant itself is the most sacred relic of the Israelites. It consists of a pure gold covered wooden chest with an elaborate lid called the mercy seat. The Ark is described in the book of Exodus as containing 2 stone tablets of the book that have like the 10 Commandments on it.
and according to the New Testament book of Hebrews, it also contained Aaron's rod and a pot of manna. And according to church leaders, the Ark of the Covenant has for centuries been closely guarded in Axum at the Church of St. Mary of Zion. Not even the highest priest of Axum can enter its resting chambers. And its sole custodian is a virgin monk who cannot leave the sacred grounds until his death. So basically they just have one dude that guards this thing, takes care of it, looks over it for his whole life, and then he dies. Up next is Michelangelo's hidden drawing room. This one was pretty sick. I love art and shit like that. I have a brand, obviously. I mean, y'all probably don't know that, but hey, if you know me in real life, you already know. So basically, Michelangelo's hidden drawing room. The room is located in Florence's Basilica di San Lorenzo. That was officially the church of the Medici family, which were the famous patrons of art who governed Florence and later Tuscany for centuries. And around 1520, the Medicis commissioned Michelangelo to design a family mausoleum. It came to be known as the Medici Chapels. But historians believe that Michelangelo eventually betrayed them by joining a 1527 revolution that drove the Medicis out of Florence. And basically, when the family finally returned back 3 years later, Michelangelo is thought to have gone into hiding for months inside the actual mausoleum itself, inside the chapel. You know what I mean? Like inside a little secret room that he had. Basically, the hidden room was 23 by 6.5 feet. It was discovered in 1975 by a museum director who spotted a trap door below a wardrobe that led to a room. After cleaning the walls, the museum director discovered dozens of doodles and scribbles on the walls. Some of the drawings, there are as many as 70 different sketches on the room's wall. Art experts disagree on how many were actually drawn by him, like Michelangelo himself. When I read it, they said at least around 20 of them were by him, guaranteed, but the other ones they're not so sure of. But up next is the Dog Suicide Bridge. So the Dog Suicide Bridge is officially known as the Overton Bridge, and it's located in West Dunbartonshire in Scotland. Basically, since the 1950s, reports of numerous dogs either falling or jumping from the bridge have been reported, with the incidents often resulting in serious death or injury upon landing on the rocks some 50 feet below. And basically, that's how they got the name Dog Suicide Bridge, because dogs just are drawn to this bridge for some reason, and they just constantly jump off. Super fucking weird, all right? At least 50 dogs have died from the fall, but over 600 have jumped. So you gotta think about that. That is a trash ratio, okay? 600 of these motherfuckers are jumping off. 50 of them died, okay? Don't get me wrong, I don't want no dogs to die. But you would think if I saw a dog jump fucking 10 feet onto some rocks, bro, I'm thinking he's gone. 50 feet, bro, and only 50 out of 600 died? I can't lie, that's pretty crazy. Good for the ones that live, man. Hopefully they didn't go back up and jump again. That would kill me inside. But anyways, we're moving on. Up next, oh shit. Up next is the land underneath Antarctica. So the Antarctic continent lies on a huge actual landmass, all right? So it's not just ice, which I was super confused about. I thought it was just a giant ice block. But apparently, underneath the smooth ice sheet, there are mountains, valleys. The sheet of ice covering it all is up to 4,000 meters high. What is that, 12,000 fucking feet about? So I don't know if we ever even gonna see this shit. And in places, the ice is about 4,000 meters deep. But around the Gamburtsev mountain ranges, it's only around 27 meters high. And it lies right underneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. So basically, we know there's land masses there. We know that there's mountains and all this shit. We just can't get to it yet. And who knows if we'll ever get to it. So up next, basically, is Jaya Shri Maha Bodhi. This is a sacred fig tree in the Mahawan Gardens in Anuradhapur, Sri Lanka. And basically, it is the southern branch from the historical Sri Mahabodhi at Buddha Gaya in India, under which Buddha attained enlightenment. It was planted in 288 BC, and it is the oldest living human planted tree in the world with a known planting date.
Anyways, in April 2014, the government banned all construction within 1,600 feet of the tree to kind of keep it safe. Only construction that's allowed closer is obviously construction that's just not going to affect the tree in any way or is not going to actually hurt it. So this tree is super sacred. If you're Buddhist or whatever, I'm sure you'd want to go to this place. I want to go check this shit out. This shit sounds crazy to me. But we moving on, man. Next thing up is the Eternal Flames Falls. So basically it's just a waterfall. It's like a really small waterfall in the Shale Creek Preserve, which is a section of Chestnut Ridge Park in Westchester, New York. So if you're in New York, you can go check this shit out today. You feel me? Basically, there's a small grotto, and at the waterfall's base, it emits natural gas, which keeps this little flame going all the time. And basically, it can be relit. It's relit kind of all the time. Sometimes it goes out, you know what I mean? So they kind of constantly relight it just to keep it going, and it's visible all year round. So not much else to that one, to be real with you. I just wanted to include it because, hey, it's on the iceberg, and I'm covering everything on here, man. I said I was, so I'm going to do it. Up next is the Valley of the Headless Men. It's officially known as the Nahanni Valley because when you look up the Valley of the Headless Men, it's a lot of just books and it's stories about this valley, but it doesn't actually, it never says anywhere that this is actually called this, okay? From my research, at least. If you look it up and you can find it, hey, I had to look up the Nahanni Valley and then go into the story from there. But basically the story starts like this, all right? In 1908, brothers Willie and Frank McLeod, sorry if I fucked up your name, boys, but they embarked on a mission into the Nahanni Valley in search of gold. They never came back, all right? 2 years later, the body of the brothers were found on the banks of the Nahanni River. Their heads, though, were nowhere to be found, all right? Gone. Deadass, just torsos and down, you feel me? The two men were murdered, decapitated, and left on the side of the river for the next party of explorers to find. 9 years after they were found and everything like that, all right? Martin Jorgensen, he sets off in the same valley, okay? Same thing. He looking for gold, bro. Stop going out there looking for gold. Just go out there sightsee. You know what I'm saying? Like, clearly that's what these guys are going out there and getting fucked over for, you know what I mean? Or there's just some crazy dude in the woods that's just chopping heads off for no reason. Soon after he set out, letters claiming that he had struck gold, his cabin mysteriously burned to the ground and the remains of his body were found among the ashes. Just like the McLeod brothers, his body was found without a head, alright? And then again in 1945, a miner from Ontario succumbed to the same exact fate. His body was found headless in his sleeping bag. And there's just a few more stories like that. Like, that's literally it. But up next is Heard Island, okay? So it's an Australian external territory comprising of a volcano group of mostly barren Antarctic islands. It's about 2/3 of the way from Madagascar to Antarctica. So if you can picture the globe, it's like Madagascar, Antarctica, it's like right around here type of thing. Basically, it was discovered in the mid-19th century. The islands lie on the Kerguelen Plateau in the Indian Ocean and have been Australian territory since 1947. They contain Australia's only 2 active volcanoes. The summit of one, Mawson Peak, is higher than any other mountain in all of Australia's other states or territories. Kind of boring, man, so we moving on to the next one. The next thing up is the Patamoski Crater or the Patum Crater. That's what I'm going with, the Patum Crater. I could say that all day, all right? It's a peculiar rock formation. It is a large mound made of shattered limestone blocks on the slopes of the Patum Highlands in the area of dense taiga. Its base diameter is about 160 meters, and its height is about 40 meters. The volume of the crater is estimated as about 160 meters, like base diameter. It's about like 40 meters tall, and then just like the overall actual like circumference and space of it is about 250 to 250,000 meters, cubic meters. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but who knows, man. And it's got a weight of about 1 million tons. So this thing is heavy as fuck. All right. Until recently, some scientists believe that the crater presents a large footprint of an ultra-dense meteorite which had sunken underground upon impact. And basically, others believe that it was a result of a breakthrough of a deep pocket of natural gas. So they really can't, there's no exact reason for this thing, is what I'm trying to say. All right, there's like 4 or 5, there's a bunch of different hypotheses and theories on this shit. Nobody really knows what the fuck it is. It's a big limestone rock thing. That's all that one is. Short, long story short, you know what I mean? Short story long. Up next though is Slope Point, okay? Slope Point is the southernmost point of the South Island of New Zealand. Slope Point lies just south of the small settlements of Wakawa and Haldane. It's near the southwestern edge of the Catlins and Totos Bay. The land around it is used for sheep farming and no houses are anywhere nearby. Eroded cliffs drop down to the sea below and everything like that. And a AA signpost there shows the distance from the equator to the South Pole. And yeah, basically there's no road to this place. You just gotta know where to go. You have to it's about a 20-minute walk from, and there's got like these little designated markers leading to it. And there's not much. It's just like a random southernmost point in fucking New Zealand, and it just shows the distance to the equator and to the South Pole. That's it. Up next though is the Leningradskaya Station. All right, it's a Russian, formerly Soviet Union, Antarctic research base. It's located on the northern shore of Victoria Land at the Oats Coast. It was opened on February 25th, 1971 by the members of the 15th Soviet Antarctic Expedition. It closed in 1991, but during its lifetime, it was host to studies of meteorology, earth magnetism, oceanology, and glaciology. And that's it. Not many people know about it. It closed pretty quickly. Wasn't open for that long. Next up is closed cities in Russia. So basically what this is, it's just a closed city or a town or settlement, whatever it is, where traveler residency restrictions are applied so that specific authorization is required to visit or remain overnight. Basically, these cities are closed to mostly everybody unless you actually live there. You need specific paperwork to go there. Nobody stays overnight. Nobody really lives there. There's tons of these things across Russia. Some of them are used for like military kind of operations and shit like that, where others are just closed just for no real apparent reason other than being closed. There are currently 44 publicly acknowledged closed cities in Russia with a total population of about 1.5 million people. There's 75% are considered administered by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Another 15 or so closed cities are believed to be in existence, but nobody actually knows the location because Russia's government hasn't said anything about them. But just from like the numbers and people like basically doing research into this more than I have, they've come to the conclusion that there should be about at least 15 or so more that just have never been talking about, never been spoken about. So up next though is Surtsey Island. It's in Iceland. All right. It's a volcanic island located in the Vestmannaeyjar archipelago off the southern coast of Iceland. Surtsey is the southernmost point of Iceland. It was formed in a volcanic eruption which began about like 400 feet under the actual like water, okay? And it reached surface on November 14th, 1963. All right, so it's just basically like it's a newer island is how I would consider it. You know what I mean? It's a brand new volcanic island. Looks pretty sick from like the pictures of it, you know what I mean? It looks pretty beautiful there, it looks peaceful and shit. Basically it was named Sutra after the fire god and giant from Norse mythology. And basically this island is special because it's only supposed to be above water for the next 100 years. And then basically they've done the math and said that the sea level will rise so much that it's gonna get covered up. Next up is the Kolar Super Deep Borehole, okay? Basically, this thing is the result of a scientific drilling project of the Soviet Union in the Pechengsky district. It's near the Russian border of Norway and is on the Kola Peninsula. Basically, this project attempted to drill as deep as possible into the Earth's crust. You know what I mean? Just keep going as far as it can go until they can't go no more. Drilling began on the 24th of May 1970 using the Urlamash 4E, which is, I'm assuming, is the drill they were using, and later the Urlamash 1500 series drilling rig. It became the deepest man-made hole in history in 1979. It's a 9-inch diameter, okay, so it's not that big of an actual hole, but it goes deep. All right, it reached about 12,262 meters or 40,230 feet in 1989, and it was officially the deepest artificial point on Earth. All right, so they hit it, the deepest man-made hole ever. Okay, it was basically from this, it got this legend, local legend, I guess. And basically, the legend holds that a team of Soviet engineers, reportedly led by an individual named Mr. Azakov, they lowered an extremely heat-tolerant microphone along with other sensory equipment into the well. The temperature deep within was 1,000 degrees Celsius or 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit. It was considered the heat from a chamber of fire, which reportedly the tormented screams of the damned could be heard. So basically, these people thought that they had drilled so far that they found hell. And later on, the looping screams were identified as the soundtrack from a fucking movie. It's called Barren Blood.
A nightmare world of horror.
So, get trolled. Next up is the Plain of Jars. But basically what this is it's a giant field of jars in Laos. It consists of thousands of stone jars scattered around the uplands and lower foothills. Basically, they're huge, all right? These are giant ass jars. They're fucking all over the place. French researcher Madeleine Colani concluded in 1930 that the jars were associated with burial practices. Excavation by Laos and Japanese archaeologists in the intervening years had supported this interpretation with the discovery of human remains, burial goods, and ceramics around the jars. The jars at Site 1 were reportedly transported there from a different location that was about 8 kilometers away. So these motherfuckers were dragging this shit forever, dog. But basically, the sad part about this thing is during the Vietnam War, so many of them were destroyed. Like, we dropped so many fucking bombs on these things. A lot of the bombs did not go off too, so there's a lot. You can't even really walk around these things, you know what I mean? They have very set paths that you can like go through for tours and stuff like that, but it's just not a safe area, man. Like, there's still explosives out there. There's still like bombs that haven't gone off yet from way back then. Next up is Monkey Island in Liberia. This is a sad one, man. I can't even lie. So in 1974, researchers from the U.S. nonprofit blood bank, the New York Blood Center, opened an experimental laboratory on the west coast of Liberia. Working with the Liberian Biomedical Research Institute, they trapped wild chimpanzees and used them to conduct research and drug trials. The animals were kept outside of the capital. Researchers infected them with various diseases such as hepatitis B and river blindness and eye sickness that's caused by a parasite. Basically, they did this so that they can study like the different treatments and stuff and if it would be like viable for humans. So we do this stuff with a lot of shit, if you didn't know that already. The total population of these animals, these monkeys I should say, it was 85 chimpanzees in total, okay? The work at the research lab was disrupted because in Liberia they had 2 civil wars going on in the 1990s, okay? In 2005, the facility was closed for good and the apes were gradually relocated to 6 uninhabited islands in the Farmington River estuary. You can't really go to this island because they're still infected with these diseases. That's why they put them on like uninhabited islands, you know what I mean, to kind of keep them away from people so they won't spread these diseases. But next thing, I'm not gonna lie, I told y'all earlier that I wasn't gonna skip nothing, but this one I'm kind of gonna skip. It's hidden oil rigs in LA. It's exactly what it says. It's just hidden oil rigs in LA. They put fake buildings over them. That's that one, and we moving on from that one quick. I ain't trying to spend too much time. Next up is the Mississippians, okay? The Mississippians, it was a Native American civilization, okay? It flourished in what is now today's Midwestern, Eastern, and Southeastern United States, okay? It was around like Mississippi, hence the name. They reigned from around 800 to 1600 CE. They're known for building large earthen platform mounds and often other shaped mounds as well. It's really not much information here, guys. Like I'm trying to get this shit out to you, but the Mississippians doesn't have that much information. All right. Up next is Mumu. It's a mythical lost continent introduced by Augustus Le Plongeon, who used the land of Mu as an alternative name for Atlantis. Okay, so Mumu, Atlantis. I prefer Mumu. The place of Mu in literature has been discussed in detail in Lost Continents 1954 by L. Sprague de Camp. Geologists dismissed the entire existence of Mu, all right, in the lost continent of Atlantis as physically impossible, arguing that a continent can neither sink nor be destroyed in the short period of time asserted in legends and folklore and literature about these places. So up next is Blood Falls. What Blood Falls is basically it's another waterfall, and the water comes out looking red. Why it comes out red is because it's basically an overflow of iron oxide tainted salt water. Easiest way to say it, all right? Flows from the tongue of the Taylor Glacier onto ice-covered surface of the West Lake Bonny in the Taylor Valley of the McMurdo Dry Valleys in Victoria Land, East Antarctica. All right, and basically the reddish color and deposit was found in 1911 by Griffith Taylor. The Antarctic pioneers first attributed the red color to algae, but later it was proven to be iron oxides. Next up though is fairy circles in Namibia. But basically what they are these circular patches of barren plants. Basically it's like little patches of dead grass. All right, that's the best way to picture it. Big field, little tiny patches of dead grass. Okay, they range between 2 and 15 meters in diameter. It's often encircled by a ring of stimulated growth of grass, and until 2014 the phenomenon was only known to occur in the arid grasslands of the Namib Desert in the western parts of South Africa. All right, being particularly common in Namibia, and in that year, ecologists were alerted to similar rings of vegetation outside of Africa in the part of Pilbara in Western Australia. Basically, so the myth of these little patches of grass goes like this. All right. Basically, they're said to have been caused by the gods, spirits, or natural divine entities, whatever you want to call them. The region's Bushmen have traditionally ascribed a spiritual and magical powers to them. Of specific beliefs, the Himba people note that their original ancestor, Mukuru, was responsible for the creation of the fairy circles, and that they were footprints from the gods. Okay? Up next is Cleopatra's tomb location. All right? Now, I know y'all heard of Cleopatra, Queen Cleopatra, Alexander the Great. It's all wrapped up in this one, my guys. The burial crypt of Mark Antony and Cleopatra VIII from 30 BC remains undiscovered somewhere near Alexandria, Egypt. According to historians, the Roman leader Octavian permitted their burial together after he had defeated them. Okay? Reports in 2008 and 2009 focused on the announcement that noted that Egyptiologist Zahi Hawass that he might have found the tomb in Taposiris Magna, a temple to Osiris. It's located in the west of Alexandria, Egypt. Excavations carried out by Kathleen Martinez have yielded 10 mummies and 27 tombs of Egyptian nobles, as well as coins bearing images of Cleopatra and carvings showing the two in an embrace. So far, the tomb itself, though, has not been discovered. And basically, they're still looking for him, man. Hopefully one day we know where these people are, but as of now, it's still a mystery. Up next is the Wanaka tree. So the Wanaka tree, also known as the Wanaka willow, is basically, it's a giant willow tree. It's located at the southern end of Lake Wanaka in the Otago region of New Zealand. The tree sits alone in the water and is a popular destination for tourists to take Instagram photos. So basically, as a result of the popularity of this tree, the Wanaka tree has been damaged on purpose and not on purpose a few times. So now it's kind of like, you know what I mean, it's a little weird. They basically kind of try to protect it nowadays. And it got so popular on Instagram that now it's known as that Wanaka tree. So pretty sick. Pictures of it definitely look dope. I don't know if it does it justice. I'll have to see it for myself. Up next is the Kocho stone. Okay, so the Kocho stone, it's basically prehistoric drawings. All right, easiest way to put it. The Bronze Age rock is found on a stone measuring 42 by 26 feet and was documented in 1887 by Reverend James Harvey. It features around 90 carved indentations, considered to be one of the finest sets of petrographs in Scotland. The stone was reburied in 1965 to protect it from vandalism, but then in 2015 it was partially exposed again for an investigation, and then again it was pulled up and now it's just out in the open for anybody to see. So pretty sick, super old drawings if you like that type of shit, if you like caveman type of things. It's pretty sick, look it up, you know what I mean? Last up is Longyearbyen. All right, It is the world's northernmost settlement, okay? That's basically the gist of it. It's the most it's the most northern actual settled place on the world, okay? And basically it's largely inhabited area of Svalbard, Norway, which if you watch my other videos, it's got the Svalbard global seed bank, which holds all the seeds that like people have discovered and are holding on to in case we need it one day. It was known as Longyear City until 1926, when the town was established and named after an American. Hey, shout out America, cuz John Monroe Longyear. All right, his Arctic Coal Company started coal mining there in 1906. So basically around 1943, World War II type of thing, the German Kriegsmarine almost completely destroyed the town on September 8th of 1943. But rebuilding took place after the Second World War. Historically, Longyearbyen has been a company town, but mostly mining operations have moved to Svegruva, I think is how I say it, all during the 1990s. And production ceased in 2017 due to immense financial losses suffered by the SNSK since 2014 due to market conditions. Meanwhile, the town has seen a large increase in tourism, research, all that stuff. This includes the arrivals of institutions such as University Center in Svalbard, as well as the Svalbard Global Seed Bank, like I said. And that's all I got for this one, yo. Like below. All right, so up first is the Ergoslog Salt Hill. Basically, this thing is this 1,200 square meter salt hill. It was created by this thermal water. It was rising from about 450 or 410 meters below the surface, and basically it was rising because it was around 68 degrees Celsius, so around like 80 something degrees Fahrenheit, so it's super warm. The actual salt hill itself is located in Hungary, and basically it's one of only 3 places in the world that actually share the same kind of natural phenomena with the thermal water and everything rising. The other 2 places are Pamukkale, Turkey, and then Yellowstone National Park, which is in the USA. And basically this hill only exists because they were doing exploratory drilling in the area in 1961, and basically they were originally looking for natural gas and oil, but they ended up finding this thermal spring instead. And nowadays they have like this spa thing that's set up next to it. It's called the Solaris Resort Medicinal and Wellness Spa, and basically the water itself at the spa has a mixture of like about 30 different trace minerals in it. The main components are calcium, sodium, magnesium, and sulfur, and basically it's supposed to have really good health effects. So alright, so up next is the world's loneliest tree. So nestled in a windswept cove on the subantarctic Campbell Island in New Zealand, this tree basically shouldn't be there at all. Called the Sitka spruce, technically is usually found in the northern hemisphere of the globe, and basically the closest tree of any kind is more than 170 miles northeast on the Auckland Islands. This tree was planted around the turn of the 20th century by New Zealand's former governor, Lord Ranfurly, and basically more than 100 years later, this introduced spruce is considered the most isolated tree in the world. Basically, it just took over the recent record holder for the world's loneliest tree, which was the tree of Teneri, and that was located in the Sahara Desert. But unfortunately, that one was actually basically destroyed by a drunk driver. Alright, so up next is Oymyakin. Oymyakin is a rural locality. It's not even considered a city, it's called a locality in the Oymyakinski district of the Sakara Republic. It's located in the Yana Oymyakin Highlands. And basically, by winter average temperatures, this place is the coldest permanently inhabited settlement on Earth. In total, it usually reaches around like negative 64 degrees Celsius, and there's not much information on this place. Basically, the population of the city has shrunk significantly. The village had a peak population of around 2,500 people, but now, like around 2018, that population went down to 900, and it didn't have any for anything more current than 2018. And basically the local economy just kind of survives on a lot of fur trading and ice fishing. Alright, so up next is Sycamore Knoll. So basically what Sycamore Knoll is it's this unusual looking structure that was found in the sea off the coast of Malibu, California.
And basically, based on the Google image of this place, it's got this big oval shape with a huge flat top on it, and it's got like these kind of pillar looking things that look like almost like an entrance kind of. And basically, what's known about it is basically that it's on the seabed floor. Basically, it's about 2,000 feet below the surface of the water, and like the size of it is about 3 miles wide. And just a lot of the speculation think that it's either a underwater government base or an alien base, maybe a UFO. There's a ton of shit on this one, to be real with you, like, and none of it is probably true. Who knows? There's like no research going into this thing, to be honest. It's just a ton of speculation. So alright, so up next is the Pocani Forest. So this forest is located in Latvia, and basically the main mystery kind of weird thing about this whole forest is these giant stones, these groups of giant stones, not even just single giant stones, these groups of these giant stones that are just kind of spread throughout the forest itself. And basically nobody really knows the true reason of why these stones are here. They're not just like random groups of rocks that you would find, you know what I mean? They're like intentionally placed groups of rocks that looked like they were going to be used for something. A lot of people think that it was going to be used to build a castle or something like that, but other people argue that it's not the kind of area that you would actually build something like that in. Plus the fact that they didn't clear any of the forest or anything kind of is like, what the fuck, why did they not do any of that, you know what I mean? Other people think that it's like this old place for like old pagan rituals and everything like that. There's a lot of different mysteries surrounding this place, but the main thing is these giant stones, because people who frequent this forest swear that these giant stones and these piles of stones move spots. And these aren't just like little rocks that just anybody can like move, you know what I mean? Like trolling people just moving these things around. And these people who come here all the time swear that these are not in the same exact place every time I come here, you know what I mean? Other places think that they have like some weird like energetic charges. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in this forest, man. There's even rumors that this place is like a gateway to a different dimension or a parallel world, whatever you want to call it. And there's even rumors that some people have died or suffered like different kinds of losses soon after visiting this forest. So, all right, so up next is the Cactus Dome. So between 1946 and 1962, the US military conducted 105 atmospheric nuclear tests over the Pacific Proving Grounds, which is a euphemism for the Marshall Islands and several other nearby South Pacific atolls, which are like little groups of islands basically. And then in the late 1970s, in an effort to clean up all the radioactive debris and like shit left over from those explosions, the government dug up 111,000 cubic yards of soil from the Bikini and Roganlap atolls, which are just, like I said, groups of islands. So basically they went up and they dug up a bunch of different dirt from all these islands, 111,000 cubic yards of soil, and they basically deposited it all on this one island called Runit Island or Runit Island. Does that make sense? It's a 350-foot wide crater that had basically been created over 2 decades earlier by an 18 kiloton nuclear test. So this was just already a crater that was because they fucking tested a nuke, you know what I mean? It blew up this shit. And this nuclear test was codenamed Cactus. So when they were covering up this giant radioactive pit, basically, it cost the government $250 million, and it took about 3 years to complete. And the result was just this enormous 1.5 foot thick, 100,000 square foot dome, which consists of about 358 gigantic concrete panels basically that are all placed on it. And there's a ton of warning signs on this island basically saying that it's radioactive and don't come here, get the fuck out of here. Constant like visitors and stuff still show up and travel there, you know what I mean? It's like not permitted basically. You can still show up, you can visit there, but I'm not going out there. That's like a guaranteed way to get cancer in my eyes. Like fuck that. All right, so up next is Fusang. So Fusang is like a little weird to talk about, but as I'm describing it, just remember that the main idea is that it's either a mythical tree or a location. So it's interchangeable between the two depending on who you ask, where you look. Described in ancient Chinese literature, mainly in Of Mountains and Seas and several other books, to be honest with you, it refers to this mythological tree of life. In Chinese mythology, Fusang refers to a divine tree and an island
which are both located far east of China from where the sun rises. And basically, according to the Chinese legends, 10 birds, typically these ravens, they live in the tree itself. And because 9 of the birds rest, the 10th bird would have to carry the sun on its journey. So that's why we get like the sun coming up and everything. So it's always a bird switching off. It's alternatively described as a country by a native Buddhist missionary named Hui Shen. He describes it as this place was rich in copper deposits, and it also contained traces of gold and silver, but it did not contain iron. The native tribe in Fusang were civilized and living in well-organized communities. They produced paper from the bark of the Fusang plants for writing, and they also produced cloth from the fibers of the bark, which they used for robes and other things. Their houses or cabins were constructed of red mulberry wood. They raised deer for meat and milk, just as the Chinese raised cattle at home, and they also produced cheese with the deer's milk, just like the Chinese would at home with their cattle and everything like that. So they were pretty similar. He said that a bunch of times. They transported their goods with carts or sledges, which were pulled by either horses, buffalo, or deers. Basically an emperor or a main chief, he didn't really know the difference. They lived with the help of several officials. They basically governed the whole country, and the majority of the people were law-abiding citizens. Basically, the country had no actual army or military defense, but it did have 2 different jails. One jail was located on the north, and the other jail was located in the south of the country. It is also reported that 11,000 li, which are Chinese miles, which is also 415 kilometers or 258 miles beyond Fusang, there was a land of women, where its female inhabitants were completely covered with hair. They walked erect, chattered a lot amongst themselves, but were shy when they saw ordinary human beings. They gave birth to their young after 6 or 7 months of pregnancy and nursed them on their backs. The babies were able to walk within 100 days and were fully grown in 3 or 4 years. And basically most people have deduced that these were actually Central American monkeys. Alright, so up next is Catalhuyuk. But basically this place was this very large Neolithic proto-city settlement. It's located in southern Anatolia, and basically it really existed primarily from like 7500 BC, so like 7500 BC to 6400 BC, but it really flourished around like the 7000 BC kind of mark. Basically it's completely like it's fully comprised of just domestic buildings, so there's no obvious public buildings around, none that they have actually found, but there's like a few like larger kind of buildings that have these murals in them, but there's no one's actually like figured out what they were used for yet, basically is what I'm saying. And basically the population of the eastern mound of this area, it was estimated to be around like 10,000, but give or take depending on how it was actually doing at the time. Households looked to their neighbors for help, trade, and possible marriage for their children, and basically they all lived in like these mud brick houses, and there's no doors. Every house has like this ladder going up, and basically that's how you would get in and out of the house. There's no real way out of the house other than that. But yeah, there's been like some clay statue figures of like pregnant women found around. There's like a bunch of different murals kind of painted around, and you got to remember that this is from 75 to 6400 BC, so this shit is old as fuck. Pretty sick, but other than that, not much. They're still kind of like excavating this area and researching it, so there's not super like a ton of information on this. But alright, so up next is Thule. So Thule is the farthest north location mentioned in any ancient Greek or Roman literature. It was first mentioned by this Greek explorer called Pythes, and basically this dude, he left the port city of Massalia, which is now Marseille, France, and he was looking for like new trade opportunities. He was mainly searching for amber and tin, and basically him and like his little group of people, they all left. They first started sailing west, and they basically hit what is now called the British Isles, and then from there they directly just shot north, and they just started sailing completely uncharted territory, but they said fuck it, let's do this, you know what I mean? So basically after a few days of traveling north, Pythes reaches this place which he describes as neither land nor sea. Instead, he described it as sort of a mixture of these two things, similar to a marine lung, in which the earth and sea and all things together are suspended, and the mixture is impassable by foot or ship. So this guy, he lands at an island close by, which he hears is called Thule, and basically after a little bit of time, he heads back, goes back to Massalia, and he writes all his journey. He writes basically about this entire experience in a book called On the Ocean. And basically this book was supposed to be preserved and like left for future generations and stuff in the Great Library of Alexandria, but unfortunately, which we all know nowadays, the Great Library actually burned down in 48 BC. And basically over the years, Iceland, Greenland, the Shetland Islands, the Faroe Islands, somewhere in this, like some Estonian islands, they've all been considered for this place, but as of now, nobody can really say that that was it, you know what I mean? Alright, so finishing up this half is the Wall of Tears. So known in Spanish as El Muro de las Lágrimas, the Wall of Tears is one of the most important historic sites in all of the Galapagos Islands. Basically, the history of this place is not a nice one, okay? So back in the 40s and 50s, they started sending these prisoners to Isabella Island. Basically, they established this penal colony on the island because they figured it was virtually impossible to actually escape this island. And the wall itself was built by the prisoners by hand, okay? And basically, they'd be put out in the sweltering heat. They would collect these giant, sharp lava rocks that were like just spread all around the island, and they would place them along the wall. Some people say the wall was never finished, as it was meant to be a wall that would surround the actual prison area, but it is more likely that it was just a simple, like, basically just like some bullshit work to just make them work, you know what I mean, for punishment. It's said that this wall basically took the lives of thousands of prisoners. Injuries, accidents, exposure, and poor treatment led to the death of many people here. Hardy, tough men were broken down and weakened here. Basically, this was just a fucked up place. It was known of the walls. It was basically got its name, the Wall of Tears, from the crying and the sacrifices of the people who actually were there and forced to build this place. And many locals think that this place is haunted, and they say that if you go near the walls, you can hear the wailing and the crying of those who actually died while they were constructing it. So that's it. All right, so up first is the Bridge of No Return. So the Bridge of No Return is located at the Joint Security Area, which is crosses the line that North and South Korea kind of meet at. The actual line is called the Military Demarcation Line, and basically back in the day it was used as a prisoner exchange at the end of the Korean Armistice in 1953, and the name originates for the final ultimatum. Basically, if people wanted to go across the bridge, which they would never be able to basically come back home from, and that's where they actually got it, you know what I mean? Even if they later changed their minds, they could never come back, which is why they got the name Bridge of No Return. So up next is Nuremberg. So Nuremberg is also known as Nuremberg. It's basically the same thing but with an O instead of a U, or vice versa, either way. But basically this thing was a legendary settlement in the northeast corner of the New England. Settlement was it was featured on a bunch of maps basically in the early 16th century up until like Europe basically colonized this region. And it was alleged that the houses in this region were they had like these giant pillars made of gold, and that the people that inhabited this place, they wore these like quartz of pearls basically all over their heads. And the word Nuremberg originally was said to be Uremberger, so it's just the O without the N. And it was said by Giovanni de Ferranzo, is how I think I say his name was. Basically he drew up a map in around 1529 that actually had America, and it had this settlement on it. And the word is like believed to mean quiet place between the rapids, or quiet stretch of water. There, it comes from like an Algonquin language. In 1542, Jean Alphonse, he reported that he coasted south from Newfoundland and had discovered a great river, and it often appeared on subsequent European maps of North America lying south of Acadia in what is now New England basically. And the town of Bangor, Maine, so that's a couple states up, basically that's right before Canada. They used to commemorate this legend during the 19th century, naming their municipal hall Nuremberg Hall. And basically in 1886, inventor Joseph Barker Stearns built a mansion called the Nuremberg Castle, and it's located on US 1 that goes through Camden, Maine basically. So if you ever want to check that out and you're over there, go check it out. But we're moving on to the next. All right, so up next is the Miracle Staircase in Loretto Chapel. So basically deep in the southwestern United States is a city called Santa Fe, the city of Holy Faith. And basically it was here that in the 1800s 7 nuns set up a school for like small children,
mainly girls. Basically, it was like a little church school. And when it was time, they built a chapel named Our Lady of Light in 1873. So a little later after they started the actual school. But basically, sometime around 1880, the entire order began to pray to Saint Joseph, who was the patron saint of carpenters. And basically, on the 9th day of them praying, a visitor came. He showed up at the actual chapel. He showed up with a mule and some tools. And basically, the first thing that the guy told these sisters was that he was a carpenter. And basically, he said that he was possible to basically construct this like big staircase that led up to the second part of their actual like building, because they had tried to build one before, but the carpenter never finished. So they basically just scrapped that idea until this guy had come along. And basically the only condition that he placed upon the sisters was that he would have to work in complete privacy. Like, he wouldn't want anybody around him when he was working, which they thought was a little weird, but they figured, hey, whatever, this guy's about to make us a whole staircase. So, and basically when the spiral staircase was done, the sisters were delighted on how it turned out, so much so that they organized this whole big like dinner banquet kind of thing for this guy's honor, basically. And when the time came, he never showed up. He disappeared. They never figured out what his name was, so they had no way of actually figuring out who this guy was to actually like thank him for it. And basically this man just kind of disappeared. But that's not like the only kind of weird thing about this staircase. So the guy is a big mystery about it, but the actual staircase itself is another complete mystery, because basically there are no central columns or support beams to this thing. It's just like all the weight is self-supported basically by the base of this staircase. He didn't use any nails or glue. He basically used, like, if you think of like how Lincoln logs kind of are, how they just lock together, he basically used that. He just kind of like used pegs that kind of like stuck together. And basically this staircase just wraps around twice and then you get up to it. So it was just pretty weird. It had 33 steps exactly. And basically that was super important to them, because apparently Jesus was 33 when he got crucified or something. I'm not religious, so I have no idea if this is actually true, but this is just what I found when I was researching. They figured that the guy who actually came and built this thing was Joseph himself, who came to their rescue, and that's why they call it St. Joseph's Staircase. So, all right, so up next is Pole of Inaccessibility. So basically a pole of inaccessibility with respect to a geographical criterion of inaccessibility marks a location that is most challenging to reach according to that criterion. Basically, the easiest way to explain this is it would be the farthest point from any land, or it would be the farthest point from whatever this criteria meets. Is that kind of making sense?
I have no idea what you just said, Giselle.
It can be defined as the center of the largest circle that can be drawn within an area of interest without encountering a coast. Or where a coast is imprecisely defined, the pole will be similarly imprecise. So you could think almost like the North Pole, or like the center, the exact center of an ocean that's the furthest from any other land, if that makes sense. Basically, there's a few different poles of inaccessibility. There's actually a bunch of them, to be honest with you. There's the northern pole of inaccessibility, the southern pole of inaccessibility, the oceanic poles of inaccessibility, and the continental poles of inaccessibility. So I just basically had to break that down real quick to actually talk about the next thing on this list. So I'm gonna get to that right now. All right, so moving on from that last one, now we're on to Point Nemo. And Point Nemo is actually the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. Basically, this is the place in the ocean that is farthest from any emerged land or humans. And basically the word Nemo itself in Latin means no one, so it's appropriately named Point Nemo because there's no one. It's the furthest point away from any humans, any emerged land. So, and basically the space that it takes up is about 34 times the size of France, roughly. Basically, it's super remote and no one really ends up going out there. A lot of scientists want to end up studying out there because basically this is the place in the ocean where like marine life barely evolves. So over here is where you're gonna find like megalodons, the giant squid type of things, basically anything that's gonna be like almost prehistoric, because they're not gonna really have evolved from way back then because they're probably so deep in the water they were basically not affected. And basically the closest humans
that get to Point Nemo is actually the people that are on the International Space Station when they're about 400 kilometers above the actual point itself. And it's really, this point is not really used for anything other than basically getting rid of old space debris. This is where a lot of like rocket ships and stuff will deorbit and like basically crash into the ocean. So that's pretty cool. And it's the place where the International Space Station, if it doesn't end up getting like basically reconstructed and like rebuilt or like recycled, I guess, this is the place where it's gonna end up landing in 2024. So it's pretty cool. But anyways, moving on to the next thing. I didn't have too much information on it, but pretty dope. All right, quick warning, I might mess up this whole name, but anyways, up next is the Chicxulub formation. Basically, this thing is a late Triassic fossiliferous formation and lager state, which is in the Chicxulub via Union Basin, which is in basically San Juan in Argentina. Anyways, the formation dates of these places range from around the Carnation Age, which is about 231.7 and 225 MA. And basically that's all based on the actual ash bed dating that they did. And basically this formation is really important to paleontological unit and is considered a lager state, as it's preserved several from early dinosaurs in this actual fossilization kind of thing from the late Triassic period. Basically a lot of coprolites and fossilized wood were found in the formation, and the formation crops out in the 1967 established Chicxulub Provincial Park, which was designated a World Heritage Site in 2000. So let's get it. All right, so up next is the Cucamonloco birthstones. So basically the Cucamonloco birthstones is one of the most important ancient cultural places in Oahu, which is in Hawaii. Cucamonlono or Moloko, its actual meaning is to anchor the cry from within, and basically it is the geographical pico, which is like the navel, so it's like kind of like when it goes in. It's that point of Oahu, and basically this place was symbolically the most powerful birth site in all the island's high chiefs, and basically anybody who was like super important or royalty on this island, or basically most of the islands. A lot of the islands actually have these birthstones, but there's only really 2 super important ones. Anyways, basically at this site, women give birth to the Ali, which is the royals' children, and basically surrounded was a bunch of royal witnesses. And basically at the birthstone, the children were born were required to learn basically like super specific traditional stuff and leadership roles from their actual ancestors in the sites and the surroundings. And basically from as early as 1100 until the mid 1600s, the father and 35 other chiefs would witness the birth of a chief at Kulinoko. This would be announced by them playing these sacrificial drums, and basically these 36 witnesses are symbolized by the 36 stones that are actually in the complex, and the newborn chief would be taken right after the birth basically to a nearby temple for basically purification, where they would sever the umbilical cord and start reading the newborn's genealogy to them. So alright, so up next is the Lost Solomon Islands, and this one, honestly man, it's a sad one. So basically these are the first islands that we've actually lost due to climate change. At least 5 reef islands in the remote Solomon Island region have been lost completely to rising sea levels and coastal erosion. And basically these islands range from 1 to about 5 hectares in size, and they supported dense vegetation that was over 300 years old. And basically sea level rising was the direct cause of this, but coastal erosion and everything definitely played a big role. And basically they said that when the temperature rises, obviously the ice starts to melt, and I mean, it's literally like I said, bro, it's straightforward, you know what I mean? Alright, so up next is the Yanar Bulag Fire Spring. So basically Yanar Bulag, or the Burning Spring, is located in the city of Astara. Basically this thing consists of a metal standpipe inside of a small pavilion in which water comes basically like kind of pouring out. And basically it looks nothing unusual, but when you light a match and touch the water itself is set on fire. and basically this occurs due to the water's high methane content, and the locals believe that the water from the spring has remedial properties. So basically they think that this thing is like medicine and it's like has healing powers and stuff like that. And basically they would often take a drink while the flame is lit, and there are always people that are actually at the springs who are filling their bottles, and it's pretty weird, but I'm not drinking any flaming water. I don't know, that's just me though. So up next is the Gross Frenderwald Cemetery. So basically this is a cemetery that's located in Germany, and basically it's a recent discovery in terms of archaeology, with initial excavations only taking place way back in the 60s. And basically, in spite of its modern day unearthing, the cemetery is easily one of the oldest ones in all of Europe. Graves are dating back almost 8,500 years, all right? But just beyond its dating, the archaeologists are rather perplexed by the mysterious nature of the multiple graves that were uncommon back in the this kind of period of time. And to that end, researchers have come across varied types of actual human remains. So pretty weird. They found a total of 9 skeletons. 4 were children. They were all below the year of 6, so they were all below 6 years old. They found 1 infant. They found a woman who was buried with an actual child that was just on her belly, and basically they found a young man who was basically he was buried upright. So if all these people are buried like this, he's buried like this, with half of him kind of sticking out of the actual dirt itself. Basically the cemetery, its actual self, the location, it was perched about on a 300-foot high hill, and it was about 50 miles north of Berlin. And basically it didn't have it had super hard soil. So what scientists and stuff are thinking is that it would be super hard to actually dig into it to make these graves. And basically it has no water sources or anything nearby, so there's not really any evidence that a settlement would have been near here. So basically people are thinking that this is an exact spot that they picked for a cemetery, either for sacrificial things or for some type of a religious kind of belief, some type of spiritual belief kind of thing. But they basically said that it was no accident that these people were buried like this, or buried in this location. All right, so this one is kind of a short one, but basically this one is the Hand in the Desert, which is in Chile. And basically this thing's real name is the Mano del Desierto. And basically it's this huge structure. Basically it's a big sculpture of a hand, a human hand. And it lies in the Atacama Desert, which is in Chile. And basically it was constructed by this Chilean sculptor named Mario Irizalaba. I might have fucked that up, but I think I kind of got that. I ain't gonna lie. Basically, he made this thing, and the whole reason he actually made it so big and what it was actually a human hand was basically it was meant to basically represent the awful human rights that Chileans were going through for all the past years that they were actually, an established place. And basically the big size of the hand was to emphasize human vulnerability and helplessness. So pretty dope story. I've never seen this until I actually looked it up, but it's pretty sick. I would love to see that thing one day. I wonder how tall it actually is. I don't think I actually found the exact size it was. I know that it's placed about 1,100 miles or meters above sea level, but they didn't say anything about the actual size of the sculpture itself. So, alright, second to last on this tier is the Sea People origin. So basically, the Sea People were originally this confederacy of naval raiders who basically would harass and basically pillage and loot these coastal towns, who were basically all around the Mediterranean region, mainly focusing on Egypt, alright? And basically, they were really active during the years 1276 to 1178 BC. And basically, they were one of the major contributing factors to the Bronze Age collapsing and basically ending. And the nationality of these people is really still unknown to this day. A lot of their records and stuff were just non-existent because people basically just said that they would come from the sea, and that was about it. They didn't really have much actual records on them. A lot of them are just mainly from Egyptian sources, who only describe them in terms of battles, such as the record from the stele at Tanis, which reads in part, "They came from the sea in their warships, and none could stand against them." Names of the tribes who comprise of the sea people were given. Basically, they called them the Sheridan, the Sheklesh, Luka, the Tersha, the Akawasha, and basically outside of Egypt, they also assaulted regions in the Hittite, I think is how I say it, Hittite Empire, and basically a bunch of other Mediterranean areas. Their origin and identity has been suggested and debated to be as Etruscan or Trojan to basically Italian, Philistine, or even Minoan. Basically, there's still a ton of mystery about the sea people. Some people think, basically, argue that if they even existed. But yeah, I think the sea people is super interesting, to be honest with you. Anything with the sea is kind of interesting because it freaks me out. So whatever, we're moving on to the last thing though, so let's get it. All right, so finishing up the fifth tier is the Getty ruins. So basically, the Getty ruins are one of Kenya's greatest mystery. They're set in the idyllic location of the Indian Ocean and buried in a deep lush forest. The town was thought to have been founded in the early 13th century, although hard evidence eludes most scientists. Basically, what has really baffled these researchers is a well-established town's mysterious abandonment and incredible development. Basically, these people had a ton of shit ready to go and just completely abandoned it.
I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'm gonna get the fuck up out of here. Shit, I'm out.
Left standing today are numerous coal brick houses, a palace, as well as an impressive mosque. However, it is not only the quality of the ruins that amazes visitors, but the advanced nature of the settlement. Getty was in many ways an advanced city with streets, running water, and they had flushing toilets, bro. Basically, corrupting the assumption that this whole discovery that they had flushing toilets and everything corrected the assumption that Africa was basically super far behind and didn't have any of these advancements. So pretty big discovery in terms of that. Getty was a cosmopolitan urban setting, and archaeologists have found Ming Chinese vases, Venetian glass, as well as other artifacts from all over the world, which basically means that these people were trading with other settlements, other places around the world. They had world trade set up. So pretty crazy shit, to be honest with you, if you're thinking about it, because most people didn't even think that a lot of world trade started until the whole Silk Road thing, all back in the Middle East and all that. So pretty crazy. And basically, this is clear evidence that the Muslim inhabitants of this coastal Kenyan town traded heavily with these cultures that were outside of their own, and developed an incredible world that has now been just basically completely overrun by these tropical forests. And since around 1948, they've been excavating this, and now it's completely protected as a national park in Kenya. So pretty dope. Honestly, the Getty ruins is something that's, I think, a lot of people should look into, because I feel like that's just such a thing that everybody thinks, is that Africa and stuff is poor or somehow super far behind and not as technologically advanced as us. But this shows that way back in the 13th century that they already had flushing toilets. So hey man, that's just crazy to me. But anyway, all right, so first up on the last tier of this iceberg is Zealandia, also known as Tasmantis. It is an almost entirely submerged mass of continental crust that subsided after breaking away from Gondwanaland around 83 to 79 million years ago. Basically, it has been described as a few different things. It's been described as a submerged continent, a continent fragment, a microcontinent, and then just a plain old continent everything else is basically. The name and concept for Zealandia was proposed by Bruce Luyenden in 1995, and basically satellite imagery shows it to be almost the size of Australia. So this thing is pretty big, even though it's mostly submerged underwater. Basically, a 2021 study suggests Zealandia is about 1 billion years old, which is almost twice the age that geologists had originally thought that it was. And basically 23 million years ago, they think that this landmass basically was completely submerged, although now today 95% of it, or right around 95% of it, is submerged, whereas the only things that are actually outside or not completely submerged in water is actually New Zealand and New Caledonia. So that's pretty dope. I didn't even know that, but hey, that's pretty crazy. You learn a new continent on the planet. That's wild. Anyways, moving on. All right, so up next are the flowers of Chicxulub Island. So basically, Chicxulub Island is practically this
polar desert with roughly 30 days of summer. Despite these extremely inhospitable conditions, these two tiny flowering plants like basically managed to just peek through the snow and exist on this like random polar desert. So pretty weird. Basically the highs in summer is about 20 degrees, so still freezing even when it's summertime. And basically the only two plants that actually grow up here are Arctic poppies and purple saxifrage, but this thing all grows up out of this like really thin kind of rocky soil, so not any type of conditions where you would normally find plants growing out of. Basically this area is so far north that it was out of a lot of historical ranges, and basically it was first spotted by Robert Edwin Peary in 1900. It was still left untouched by mankind until it was visited by Danish explorer Laug Koch around the 1920s, like 1921. And basically when he finally arrived here, he said that these scant meadows of purple saxifrage and Arctic poppies, both of which are completely edible, so you would actually be able to survive over here. They grow around a bunch of different mosses, liverworts, and lichens. And basically that this place may take a millennia to deposit a layer of soil a foot thick on top of this permafrost and gravel. So you gotta think, basically all these plants are growing on top of this permafrost. So it's pretty weird basically. This spot is not only perched on top of the world, but it also holds the title for being the highest elevation plant as well. It was discovered in the Swiss Alps by Swiss botanist Christian Korner at an elevation of 14,780 feet. While it is not possible to visit this island unless you are part of a sponsored expedition with full equipment, both these flowers can be found just throughout Sweden and Norway normally. So if you want to see the flowers, you can still see it, but unless you're part of like some super crazy sponsored expedition, you actually can't go up this mountain and see these specific ones. So alright, so up next is Nabta Playa. So located in Africa, Nabta Playa stands some 700 miles south from the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. It was built more than 7,000 years ago, making Nabta Playa the oldest stone circle in the world and possibly Earth's oldest astronomical observatory. It was constructed by a cattle worshipping cult of nomadic people to mark the summer solstice and the arrival of the monsoons. Basically, in the 1960s, Egypt was planning a major dam project along the Nile River that was going to flood important ancient archaeology sites basically. So they were going to build this dam, and after this dam was built, it was going to end up flooding all of this archaeological sites. And basically the United Nations Education, Scientific and Culture Organization stepped in with funding to help relocate famous structures as well as scour the area for new sites before they were lost forever. So basically the UN stepped in and basically threw a bunch of money at this, said, yo, listen, we got to move these things out of the way because we got to really preserve this stuff, and while we're at it, we're just going to also dig around and look for some new stuff before you even set the water to go this way, so we don't miss anything beforehand. This prominent American archaeologist named Fred Wendorf saw another opportunity. He wanted to search for the ancient origins of the pharaonic Egypt. By luck, in 1973, a Bedouin, a nomadic Arab, this guy was a guide, his name was Eid Marif. He came across a group of what looked like large stone megaliths while crossing the Sahara. Basically, these two were working together since the 1960s. He took this dude out to the site, which sits around 60 miles out from the Nile River. However, Ramud Swid, Wendorf's longtime friend and collaborator, remembers the discovery story differently. He says that the entire team was driving across this big stretch of desert in 1973 when they stopped for a bathroom break, and it was then that they discovered this giant megalithic remains. So up next is the shifting sand dunes. Located near Olduvai Gorge lies the spectacular yet mysterious ash dunes of shifting sands. Formed from volcanic ash, these crescent-shaped dunes, these things are a super rare phenomena and are technically referred to as barken. So if I say barken again, you know that refers to these crescent-shaped dunes. These dunes are formed when there's an ample amount of dust on the ground and an undirectional wind like basically creates this weird moving effect. So it's almost like a optical illusion when you're looking at it. And basically the volcanic ash or dust collects around a rock and continually gathers until it forms what appears to be a small sand dune. Then this process is continuous and basically it progresses. The unidirectional wind causes the dune to move. So basically all this dirt and volcanic ash kind of wraps around this rock until the point where basically the wind is pushing against it so much that it actually starts to move it. So it's not really an optical illusion, but it kind of starts out that way, whereas like the wind kind of makes it look like it's moving until it actually is like sliding across the desert floor. The local Maasai tribe believes that the sand dunes originated from Ol Denoyo Lenge, or the Mountain of God, which is the holiest place in their whole culture. Basically, in addition to not being like other sand dunes in appearances, the dunes are made up of fine black sand, and the sand is also extremely magnetic due to its high levels of iron. Basically, you could grab a handful of the sand, toss it up in the air, and instead of it just like blowing away, all of it will just clump together like a rock kind of thing and fall right back on the ground. So pretty dope. Alright, so up next is the lost land of Lyonesse. So Lyonesse is a kingdom which, according to legends, consisted of a long stretch of land basically that started from Land's End at the southwestern tip of Cornwall, England, and it basically stretched all the way to what is now the Isle of Sicily in the Celtic Sea portion of the Atlantic Ocean. And basically it was considered lost after being swallowed by the ocean in a single night. The people of Lyonesse allegedly lived in what is described as fair towns with over 140 churches and worked in fertile low-lying plains. Lyonesse's most significant attraction was a castle-like cathedral that was presumably built on top of what is now the Seven Stones Reef between Land's End and the Isles of Sicily. And basically, Lyonesse is mentioned in Arthurian legend, but particularly in the tragic love and lost story of Tristan and Iseult. So basically, it's mentioned specifically in this one book. Lyonesse is most notable as the home of the hero Tristan, one of the knights from the Round Table. And basically, this dude's father, Meliodas, was the king of Lyonesse. After the death of Meliodas, Tristan became the heir of Lyonesse, but he was never able to take up his inheritance because Lyonesse was actually swallowed by the sea while he was away with his uncle at the king's court in Cornwall. Basically, in later traditions, Lyonesse is said to have sunk beneath the waves of the ocean in a single night, yet stories differ between whether this catastrophic event occurred on November 11th, 1099 or 10 years earlier in 1089. Basically, according to this legend, the people of Lyonesse allegedly had committed a crime so terrible that God took his revenge on them and their whole entire kingdom. The crime is never mentioned in every stories, textbooks, legends. The crime is never mentioned, so nobody really knows exactly what they think they did. But the legend tells of a horrific storm that occurred over the course of a single night, which resulted in an enormous wave that swallowed the kingdom and everything that was in its path. In what may have been a tsunami or a tidal wave, the kingdom of Lyonesse was lost forever and disappeared from the face of this earth as if this thing just never existed. And basically, even to this day, there's no real found proof other than it just being mentioned in a bunch of old books and legends, stories, stuff like that. So pretty interesting, almost kind of like an Atlantis kind of thing. I just got swallowed by the ocean. So pretty interesting shit, man. Hey, who knows? But we're moving on to the next thing. All right, so up next is Villa Epicurean. So Villa Epicurean was this tourist village in Buenos Aires province of Argentina, and is sat on the eastern shore of Laguna Epicurean. Basically, tourism was developed by this English dude after he took out the land on a lease, and then he started to market all the land as having these healing properties. And this dude was honestly a master finesser, because he even went and hired a bunch of Italian scientists to even bolster this claim to say that it was true. And basically, at its height, Villa Epicurean could accommodate at least 5,000 visitors. Basically, tragedy struck on November 6, 1985, when a Sichin caused by a rare weather pattern broke a nearby dam, then the dike protecting the village. Basically, this water rose rapidly, reaching a peak of 10 meters, which is about 33 feet high, and the village became just uninhabitable and was never rebuilt. Basically, nobody ever went back to rebuild it after it just got super flooded out. Many of the ruins are covered by a layer of white and gray salt. And at the time, there were up to 280 businesses in this place, including lodges, guest houses, hotels, and businesses that over 25,000 tourists visited between November and March alone. Basically, the town's highest population was around 1,500 at its peak. And as of 2011, it only had one resident, Pavlo Novak, who was born in 1930. And basically, after the flood, he returned to his house in 2009 when the waters finally receded. And basically, in 2013, they made a documentary called Pablo's Villa,
which chronicles his life and the life of the town and everything before the actual flood happened and this town was just completely demolished. So pretty interesting. If you want to learn more about this, I would just go watch the documentary, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure Pablo's got some crazy stories about it. So anyways, moving on to the next one. All right, so up next is UTA Flight 772 Memorial. So UTA Flight 772 was a scheduled international passenger flight of the French airline Union des Transports Aériens operating from Brazzaville in People's Republic of the Congo. 46 minutes later, after they took off, at its cruising altitude of 35,100 feet or 10,700 meters, a suitcase bomb exploded in the cargo hold, causing the UTA Flight 772 to break up over the Sahara Desert about 450 kilometers east of Agassiz, which is in the southern tundra of Niger. And basically the explosion scattered debris hundreds of square miles all over the desert. All 156 passengers and 14 crew members passed away. And basically where this plane had actually fallen and like landed after the wreck, the families of the victims had built this crazy memorial to them. It's basically this life-size silhouette of the aircraft that lies in this big stone circle that's surrounded by 170 broken mirrors, which is each representing somebody that actually died on the flight. And it's jutting out, pointing north like a sundial, and it stands like basically is the wing, and it just stands right up out of the thing, and it's like acts like a sundial. When you see the pictures, man, it's crazy because apparently you can actually see this thing from space on the International Space Station. So all right, so up next is the Kat Shabib Wall. Basically the Kat Shabib Wall is this ancient wall in southern Jordan, and basically the remains of this wall are about 150 kilometers long, making it the longest linear archaeological site in Jordan. The archaeological ruins were first identified by a British diplomat named Sir Alec Kirkbride in 1948. Ever since, a range of disciplines, including archaeologists, scientists, and anthropologists, have all studied the wall. The date of the Kat Shabib's construction is still unknown. However, it is widely debated by archaeologists. This is evident as some archaeologists argue that the wall was built during the Iron Age, while others argue that it was actually built during the Nabatean period. And basically, the Kat Shabib was built and used by this semi-nomadic tribe of Bedouin people, which are just like the nomadic Arab people, whose livelihoods consisted of herding and farming in the harsh, arid environment of the Jordan Desert. And basically, the Kat Shabib was not used for any military purposes. Rather, the ancient wall served as just like a border, because at the time of its construction, it's not even taller than 1.5 meters. So it's not even like, it's like 4 feet tall. You know what I mean? It's not really keeping anybody out. It's more so just to let you know that it actually is a border. And basically they are thinking that it was only built that high because they couldn't really keep the integrity of the wall for as long as it's been. So there's not too much information on it. They're still like researching this and trying to figure out what it's all purpose for. But you know, that's the way with a lot of this like older ancient kind of stuff is. It's just all researching it and never really knowing a true answer. But hey, you know what I mean, we can make some educated guesses at some point. So moving on to the next thing, rock paintings in the Colombian Amazon. So basically in 2017, a British Colombian research team funded by the European Research Council spotted these paintings that stretched across 8 miles of these cliffs in Sierra de la Lindosa, which is part of this Colombian Amazon like rainforest kind of thing. Tens of thousands of images, including depictions of mastodons, giant sloths, and other now extinct animals. Basically, this research team kept this place a secret while continuing to work and actually prepare like this TV series on the Discovery, almost like a Discovery Channel kind of thing. And basically, Live Science's Laura Gegel reports that ancient artists created the works between 12,600 and 11,800 years ago. So somewhere in between that time period. At the time, the area was transforming from a landscape of savannas, shrubs, and forests into this tropical rainforest that we actually have today. And according to a team member named Mark Robinson, who is also an archaeologist at the University of Exeter, the people who made the images were probably among the first humans to live in the Western Amazon at all. So pretty crazy shit. I always love rock paintings and stuff like that because I just think it's crazy that we always been drawing stuff. Crazy shit, man. Hey, so up next is the Kingdom of Axum. So The Kingdom of Axum, also known as the Aksumite Empire, was a kingdom centered in northeastern Africa and southern Arabia from classical antiquity to the early Middle Ages. It was based primarily in what is now northern Ethiopia and spanned to modern day like Sudan, basically like eastern Sudan. The kingdom was considered one of the ancient world's 4 great powers of the 3rd century by Persian prophet Mani, alongside Persia, Rome, and China. So they were super popping back then. They were one of like the big top powerhouses, basically like how United States, China, and stuff is today. Beginning with the reign of Endubis, Axum minted its own coins, which have been excavated in locations as far as Caesarea and southern India. The kingdom continued to expand throughout the late antiquity, conquering Meroe for a very short period of time, from whom it inherited the Greek Eximum Ethiopia. So basically, the whole reason Ethiopia even got its name was because they had taken over this place called Meroe, and basically they inherited the Greek word Ethiopia, and that's how it finally got it. Basically, Axum's final 3 centuries were considered a dark age. In uncertain circumstances, the kingdom collapsed around 960. I think that's AD. Despite its position as one of the most foremost empires of the late antiquity, the kingdom of Axum fell into obscurity as Ethiopia remained isolated throughout the Middle Ages, and now we just have Ethiopia and Sudan and all the other countries as they are today. So pretty cool. But anyways, we're moving on to the next thing. Alright, so up next we got the Dashka stone. So the Dashka stone is this controversial artifact that is believed to some to be the guidelines used by the architect of the world. Pretty heavy statements, if I'm being honest with you. Basically known as the map of the creator, this stone tablet has baffled researchers ever since its discovery in 1999. As impossible as it may seem, Russian experts believe the stone could be 120 million years old. That is old as fuck, my boy. But it depicts not only the environments of the Ural Mountains, but also a series of civil engineering projects, including 7,457 miles of channels, several dams, and hieroglyphic notations of unknown origin. The accuracy and perspective of the map suggests that it was created from an aerial point of observation. So basically, all these lines and indentations cut into the map are so good that people are believing that you needed an aerial view. You basically need to be looking down at this thing to actually get these cuts right. The hieroglyphs have not, as the time of writing, been deciphered, but are thought to have been related to an ancient form of Chinese. So people are thinking that this is like a really old form of just Chinese language. Archaeologists from the Bashkir State University discovered the Dashka stone in the Ural Mountains of eastern Russia on July 21st, 1999. The discoverers were immediately struck by the size of the tablet. Basically, this thing is 58 inches high, 48 inches wide, 6 inches thick, and it weighs about a ton, which is around 2,000 pounds. Upon further examination, the researchers were even more stunned, as the tablet appears to show a highly accurate topographical map of Bashkir, a specific area of the Ural Mountains, basically. So this thing has a super detailed map of this exact area, at a scale of approximately 1 to 1.1 kilometers. So this thing is pretty on point with its actual size and mapping of the actual area that it's supposed to be of. Alexander Churov, a professor at Berkshire State University who led the team, named the stone Dashka in order to honor his granddaughter who was born that same day. So pretty dope. Shout out to Dashka. Hopefully you still, you was only born in 1999 because you chilling. Like, you probably like, what, 22? Not even? 23 maybe? But hey man, shout out to you. That stone's crazy. Moving on to the last thing on this this half of this tier though, so let's get it. Alright, so finishing up this half of the final tier is Glacier Republic. So the Glacier Republic is a fictional micronation created as an advertising awareness campaign created by Greenpeace in Chile on March 5th, 2014 in protest over mining corporations building on or near glacier, or like near this actual one specific glacier, and causing a damage. According to the activists, loopholes in the law between the borders of Chile and Argentina and a legal vacuum in regulations regarding the sovereignty of glaciers allow them to legally create the republic. So basically they found like these certain loopholes, and because this glacier was approximately in between so many of these countries and it technically wasn't on anybody's actual land, they could claim this country. Chile contains 82% of South America's glaciers, but currently has no laws in place to actually protect them. And the activists say that once Chile has passed appropriate legislation recognizing and guaranteeing the integrity and protection of the glaciers, the Glacier Republic and its citizens, basically they'll give it back to Chile, is what they're saying. They're like, yo, we just want some laws to protect them and make sure that nothing's going to happen to them. We're not going to just be destroying these things. And then we will give up our sovereignty and we will basically return the Glacier Nation or whatever, the Glacier Republic, to Chile or to its rightful owner or whatever. Basically, therefore, the real purpose of this entire glacial republic, it's just a big protest. You know what I mean? They just want protection for these things. It's not created to be a long-lasting country at all, but to force the Chilean government to protect the glaciers. And within the first 10 days of its independence, more than 40,000 people signed up to become citizens in support of the republic, which has already opened embassies in about 40 countries around the world, which is essentially just those that Greenpeace, the actual country, international, already has offices in. But anyways, pretty sick shit. Check them out. To be honest, I don't know if they're still doing their thing because that was back in 2014, but I'm sure they still need some signatures and stuff. So anyways, if I can't find the link, I'll link that down below too. All right, so first up is Inaccessible Land. So Inaccessible Land, what it actually is it's just this extinct volcano that was last active about 6 million years ago, and the island itself is about 12.5 kilometers, like square area kind of thing. And the island is part of this archipelago of different islands. It's part of the Tristan da Cunha archipelago, which is part of like the United Kingdom's territories. And basically, Tristan da Cunha is only accessible by a 7-day voyage, which you have to leave from Cape Town, which is in South Africa. And basically, you can only land on inaccessible land like a few days out of the year, because other than that, it's just inaccessible, like the name suggests, you know what I mean? But anyways, there's two suspected reasons as to why it's called Inaccessible Land. The first one is that on newly found maps, that like basically when these Dutch crews would sail by it, they weren't able to reach the interior of this island, so they just marked it on the map as Inaccessible Land. And the other one claims that this French captain named d'Echeverrion, that he renamed the island in 1778 after not being able to land on it. And basically, at least 3 confirmed shipwrecks have occurred off the coast of Inaccessible Land. The first was Blendon Hall, which is a British ship which set sail around 1821. It had about 54 people on board, which was like the passengers and the crew on the ship. And basically, they were heading towards Bombay. And the captain, which his name was Alexander Grieg, he intended to sail past St. Helena, but like these crazy winds and currents and stuff carried the ship all the way to Tristan da Cunha. Basically, the ship got caught up in seaweed, and on July 22nd, it drifted aground onto Inaccessible Land. And during this whole shipwreck, 2 people died out of all 54, so they still have 52 people at this point. And basically, they spent the next few months surviving on like wild celery, seals, penguins, and albatross. Now, these people, a few months later, they were able to build another boat. They were able to build actually 2 boats. The first one, they attempted to sail back to Tristan, and basically it wrecked and they lost 6 people. The second one, they basically were able to get there and alert the Tristans about the like whole shipwreck and everything. And the remainder of these people who like were saved basically were brought back to Tristan, and then they were brought back over to Cape Town at some point. And the other 2 shipwrecks that had happened on this island were the wreck of the Shakespeare at Pig Beach in 1883 and the Helleniscy at North Point in 1897. So that's that one. Nothing too crazy, but we're going on to the next one. All right, so up next is the Kukuteni/Taipalian settlements. The Kuku/Taipalia culture is also known as Tripoli culture. Basically, it's this Neolithic/Eneolithic archaeological culture, and basically it was around from about 5500 to 2750 BC, and basically they were around like Eastern Europe kind of area. They extended from the Carpathian Mountains to the Dniester and Dnieper, which is like now on modern day Moldova, and covering substantial parts of western Ukraine and northeastern like Romania. So it's all in like that general kind of area. Basically, the majority of these settlements consisted of high density small settlements that were like basically concentrated mainly in the Siret, Prut, and Dniester river valleys. During its middle phase, which was around 4000 to 3500 BC, populations belonging to the Kuku/Tairpili culture built the largest settlements in all of the Neolithic Europe. And basically, some of these contained as many as 3,000 structures, so like 3,000 buildings, and they were inhabited by possibly as many as about 20,000 to 46,000 people. That's a lot of people back then. Like, you gotta think about it. I mean, big cities and stuff weren't really, yeah, they were popping, but like not crazy, not way back then, you know what I mean? They didn't even have like real technological growth back then, or at least not that we know of. One of the most notable aspects of their whole culture was this periodic destruction of the settlements, with each single habitation site having a lifetime of roughly 60 to 80 years. So basically, these people would set up shop, and around 60 to 80 years, they would burn the place, like destroy it, not leave like a trace basically, and then move on, set up shop again, so on and so forth kind of thing. So they were kind of nomadic, but not exactly, because they were staying put for multiple decades, you know what I mean, almost a century, and then they would just dip out. Anyways, the purpose of these burnings, these settlements, is a subject of debate among many people. Some of the settlements were reconstructed several times on top of like earlier kind of settlements. So they would build a settlement, burn it, travel around, circle back, build one again on top of something that's already been burned. So they were just like circling back and forth basically. Around the 1990s and early 2000s, another theory regarding the end of the Kukateni/Tairpilian culture emerged based on climate change that took place around the end of their like entire existence, and that is known as the Blight/Coriander subboreal phase, which began around 3200 BC. And this is when the Earth's climate became colder and drier than it had ever been since the end of the last ice age, resulting in the worst droughts throughout the history of Europe since the beginning of agriculture. Basically, this thing just like was wiping out crops. It was too dry, you know what I mean? Couldn't really grow anything, so, you know what I mean? It was basically a big drought, you know what I mean? Big famine at the end of the day. Especially because their cultures relied like a ton on farming and all that stuff, you know what I mean? It was like a really good agricultural culture type of thing. So anyways, a lot of people just think that they ended up collapsing under this, and basically the conditions around this time when they would have collapsed are similar to another thing that I talked about in my disaster iceberg, which is the Dust Bowl, which happened like around the Midwest of the United States in about like the 1930s. So if you want to go check that out, because that's basically what they were going through, same type of time, just different age, you know what I mean? So we're moving on to the next one. All right, my bad guys, that last one was a long one, but this one's a short one. So up next is the Seven Giants in Russia. Are these mysterious series of rock formations located in the west of the Ural mountain range, which is one of the most remote areas in all of Russia. Basically, these 7 majestic stone pillars stand in the Tryosko-Pechgorsky district, but these things are in the Autonomous Republic of Komi and have been named among the 7 wonders of Russia. These monoliths measure a height ranging from 30 to 42 meters, and they're arranged in like this big circle, 6 of which are like really like kind of close together and lined up on this hill, and then the 7th one that's just kind of like a little bit away. And basically these big ass like rock columns, they date back 200 to 300 million years and are the result of erosion caused by wind and ice during the last ice age. So some researchers also believe that the pillars could have been a karstic origin, or formations caused by the dissolution of soluble rock layers. So what that is just saying is basically they think that the earth might have been covering it a lot more, and it just all eroded and just left these, so you can see like the different rock formations and stuff like that. All right, so up next is the Debos giraffes. So the Debos giraffes are these Neolithic petrographs by an unknown artist on the western side of the Air Mountains, which is in north central Niger in Africa. And basically the carvings are believed to have been done about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, so somewhere in that range, during the African humid period when the region was less arid and the Sahara was a vast savanna. And basically these are the largest known animal petrographs in the world. These giraffe carvings were first recorded by French archaeologist Christian Dupuy, and basically he found these things in 1987. And basically it was documented by David Coulson in 1997 while on a photographic expedition to the site. So basically these two guys are the first people that actually saw it. One dude saw it, one guy photographed it. You know what I mean? Makes sense? These carvings are 6 meters, which are about 20 feet in height, and consist of 2 giraffes carved into the Davos rock with a great amount of detail. And when you see the pictures, these things do look like giraffes. Like, not even like some little shitty carvings like how you're expecting it. These things are like pretty spot on with some giraffes. The rock itself is located on a slope of a small rocky outcropping of a sandstone in the first foothills of the Air Mountains. One of the giraffes is male while the other one is a little smaller and is female. And in the surroundings, 828 images have been found engraved on the rocks, of which 704 are animals, including cows, giraffes, ostriches, antelopes, rhinos, lions, and camels, and 61 are humans. 17 are inscriptions in Tinfang, which is like an ancient language kind of thing. Basically, these engravings are so old and they're falling apart, and like they're basically being destroyed from human activity. A mold was made of the engravings for display, and an aluminum cast of the mold is on display at the airport of Agadir. So alright, so up next is the Gulf of Combat. So basically, on the 19th of May in 2001, India's Union Minister for Human Resource Development, Science and Technology Division, Murli Manohar Joshi, this guy announced that the ruins of an ancient civilization had been discovered off the coast of Gujarat in the Gulf of Combat. The site was discovered while they were performing routine pollution studies using sonar, and basically it was described as an area of regularly spaced geometric structures. It is located 20 kilometers from the Gujarat coast. It spans about 94 kilometers and can be found at a depth of about 30 to 40 kilometers, which is about like 98 to about like 140 feet or 130 feet more so. Basically, in his announcement, Joshi represented the site as an urban settlement that predated the Indus Valley civilization. So this thing was super old. Basically, they had never found anything this old in this area. Further descriptions on the site by Joshi describe it as containing regularly spaced dwellings, a granary, a bath, a citadel, and a drainage system. So these people were kind of having it lit, you know what I mean? They even had a drainage system. I mean, as long as you got some plumbing and stuff, I mean, what else you really need at the end of the day? Because some good toilet paper, that's really it. A follow-up investigation was conducted by NIOT in November of 2001, which included dredging up like to actually recover these artifacts from the dirt. So they actually started to dig it up, and sonar scans, not scams, to actually detect the structures underground. And among the artifacts recovered were a piece of wood, pottery shards, weathered stones that were initially described as like some kind of hand tools, fossilized bones, and a tooth. Artifacts were sent to the National Geographic Research Institute. So basically they sent it all to this stuff, and the piece of wood was carbonated to be an age about 9,500 years old. So yeah, this structure, or this whole settlement, this whole whatever they even want to call it, I guess is a civilization. Super old, right around 10,000, like 9 to 10,000 years old. So super old shit, man. But anyways, moving on. All right, so up next is Baltia. So Baltia is also known as Basilia or Abius, and basically it's this mythical Greek/Roman island, supposedly located in the Baltic or North Sea, and sometimes it's confused with being like in the location of Prussia or Jutland or somewhere around their coastlines. Basically, this place was considered to be a major source of amber at the time. It's mentioned in the times of the ancient Greek states that the island is mentioned as being 3 days sail from Scythia, and in a few occult and ancient stories of the elder species, the island was meant to have been created when a massive chunk of amber slammed into the earth. Smaller shards were scattered throughout the world, spreading deposits all over the place, which is how we actually got amber. Although most of the stories say that The amber came from a depth of the void during the early days of the material plane and contained the trapped spirits of the never-born gods and their never-born minions. That's a fucking mouthful, bro. Holy shit. This was then blasted into the material plane at the start of the universe along with the first inhabited world. Since the rest of the gods didn't want the contents escaping, they forced the amber to sail the multiverse until it was caught in the gravity of the well of the solar system. This led it to breaking apart as it sailed past the outer planets, with its slivers landing on many of these and their moons, and the main body still survived along with many shards that hit Earth, and that is how Baltia basically became a thing, and that's how all the stories suggest that it became a thing. But so up next is Vinland. Basically Vinland is just this ancient name for an area of the Fennoscavia and Scandinavia kind of area. Vinland is known from an old English account written in the 9th century, which uses information provided by a Norwegian adventurer and traveler named Othere, and from Nordic sources, primarily Icelandic. A possible additional source was written in the modern day area of Norway, and basically all Nordic sources date from the 12th and 13th centuries. So everything that mentions this place is around like the 12th and 13th centuries, at least from the Nordic sources. So this guy Othere, he basically said that the Norwegians' land was very long and very narrow, and to the east are wild mountains parallel to the cultivated land. Finns inhabited these mountains, then along with the land southwards, and on this other side of the mountain is Sweden. Along that land northwards, Vinland, or Quenland is I guess how they say it. It's spelled with a K, but they're pronouncing it with a C. Different views exist on ancient scholars have made references to Vinland. Basically, no one really knows exactly it. This is just this guy Othere's actual like statement of them. And basically, a lot of references actually claim that Vinland was dominated by a lot of women. And some have suggested that there have just been misinterpretations in the terminology with women. And basically, whatever etymology origin of the element Ven, it effortlessly translates to women in Old Norse. So a lot of people think that Vinland or Quenland, whatever, was actually just ran and dominated by women at the time, which was just super out of the norm if it was way back then. I mean, we move on to the next thing. All right, man. Up next is Zazura. So Zazura was long rumored to have existed in the deep desert west of the Nile River in Egypt or Libya, one of the two. In writings dating back to the 13th century, the authors spoke of a city which was as white as a dove, and they called it the Oasis of Little Birds. And basically, Zazura is said to have been the city in the Sahara full of treasure with a sleeping king and queen. The city is guarded by black giants who keep anyone from going in or coming out. However, this may have been reference to the black Tebo people who were nomads in Chad and Libya and whose ancestors used to raid oases out in the Sahara. So basically, these people might have just been seeing actual people and calling them giant. I mean, who knows, you know what I mean? People might have been 7 foot tall and these people were 5 foot, you know what I mean? At that point, you a giant, cuz. So anyways, the first European reference to Zazura is in an 1835 account by an English Egyptologist named John Gardner Wilkinson, based on a report by an Arab who said he had found the oasis while searching for a lost camel, placed 5 days west of the track connecting the oasis of Fafara and Bahira. The oasis, called Wadi Zizora, abounded in palms with springs and some ruins of some uncertain date. Basically, this thing had springs, palm trees, and some buildings on it, is what he was trying to say. More recently, though, European explorers made forays into a desert in search of Zazura, but never succeeded in finding it. They said the main thing at the end of it was basically they said that it would never actually be solved by discovery. Like, Zazura itself was just a legend, and it would actually never be discovered. It could not be found. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of just a waste of time looking for this one specific one, especially when you found all these other ones already. So, all right, so up next is Tromelin Island. So Tromelin Island is basically just this flat, low-lying island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's about 450 kilometers east of Madagascar, and the island itself doesn't have much on it besides an airstrip and a weather station. But basically, back on July 31st of 1761, this French ship called Utile, which was a part of the French East India Company, it was chartered by Jean Joseph de Laborde and commanded by Captain Jean de Lafargue. And basically this ship was transporting slaves from Madagascar to Mauritius. And during this, it ran onto the reefs of the island. Basically, when the ship left, it had 160 Malagasy men, women, and children on board. And basically, it was supposed to bring them into slavery onto Mauritius. Due to a navigation error, because they were using two conflicting charts, the vessel ended up crashing into the reefs of Tromelin Island, which was then called the Isle of Sand. And the ship was a frigate, not a slave ship, and thus was not equipped with the shackles and chains usually found on a slave ship. So basically, after the wreck, the crew and about 60 Malagasy people managed to reach the island. The crew retrieved various equipment, including food and wood from the wreckage. They dug a well, providing drinking water, and they fed on salvaged food, turtles, and seabirds. Now, Captain Jean lost his mind as a result of the wreck. Basically, this dude went completely insane, and he was then replaced by the first lieutenant, who was the second in command, called Barthélemy Castellan du Vernet. That's a mouthful, my guy. Castellan had built 2 camps, one for the crew and one for the slaves. He built a forge and an oven, and with the materials recovered from the wreckage, he began construction of a boat. Now, a few months later, on the 27th of September in 1761, a contingent of 122 French sailors, crew, and officers left Tromelin aboard the Providence, and basically they left the surviving slaves, which was about 60 people, men and women. They left them on this deserted island, and they promised them that they would come back one day. Remember that. It was not until the 29th of November 1776, which was 15 years after the original sinking of this ship, he reached the Tromelin Island and rescued the survivors. 7 women and an 8-month-old child. Tromelin Lengwe discovered that the survivors were dressed in plaited feather clothes and that they had managed during all these years to keep a fire lit. Despite this island is not big. Like, look it up. It is small. All it has is this little airstrip and a weather station. They don't have that much foliage or trees, so they kept this fire lit for 15 years, man. That's something that I don't even know how they really did that, to be honest, but good for them, because that's probably one of the things that really helped them out during that time. The Maganese people, who had been left on the bleak little island, built a shed with coral stones, and for most of the wood had been used during the construction of the raft by the crew that had left the island. They also built a lookout on the highest point of the island in order to not miss a ship that would or could help them if they kind of came by. They were all from the central highlands of Madagascar and had no knowledge of how to produce food in the coastal environment, and most had died within the first few months on the island. The survivors, though, that this guy had picked up, they all remained with this guy, Jacques, and basically when he declared them free and offered to bring them back to Madagascar, they all refused and they chose to just stay with this guy and like basically be boys, you know what I mean? Like, yo, that's just crazy. So hey, shout out to him, man. He's a real one. He actually went back and saved them, I guess. Good for him. But we're moving on. Only 2 things left on this. My bad. That one took forever, man. Alright, so up next is the Singing Sand Dunes of Liwa. So, according to local legend, evil spirits whisper names to disorient travelers and drag them into danger, singing through the moaning tons of the sand dunes. From beneath footsteps and car wheels, a deep roaring tone comes from the sand. The sound has been compared to the low note of the didgeridoo, or a low flying plane. So this thing is pretty loud. Now, back in the 1200s, Marco Polo, yes, the Marco Polo, in this dude's journeys through the dunes of China, he said he was struck by the sounds of all kinds of musical instruments and also of drums and the clash of arms. So, pretty reputable guy that's saying that he's heard this shit, you know what I mean? Now, the phenomenon is caused by the vibrations of the grains of the sand that fall on top of each other, and the study of it is pretty new. However, the physicists debate that the model that most accurately describes the mechanism is basically this, you know what I mean? That's like the best way to describe it, is that when they fall on top of each other, the vibrations cause these noises which sound like instruments and all this other stuff. Now, basically, 30 locations worldwide, including ones in China and the US, have singing sand. but none, experts say, has as pronounced and mellifluous a sound as the giant dunes in the south of the UAE, which is the United Arab Emirates, which is basically where this Liwa kind of thing is. And basically the area is known as the Empty Quarter and stretches all the way into Saudi Arabia. So pretty terrifying stuff, thinking that fucking sand dunes are singing to you, trying to drag you in and sing up. All right, we finally hear the last thing on the entire iceberg, the graves of Beechey Island. So basically, Beechey Island is an island located in the Canadian Arctic archipelago of Nunavut. Is that, I think I say it? It's in Canada, and it's in the Wellington Channel. Beechey Island is best known for containing 3 graves of Franklin expedition members, which were first discovered in 1850 by searchers for the Lost Franklin expedition. Now basically the searchers found a large stone along with the graves of 3 Franklin crew members: Petty Officer John Torrington, Royal Marine Private William Brain, and able seaman John Hartnell. RIP to y'all, man. But there was no written record nor indication of where Franklin planned to sail the next season after like this whole thing happened. Now back in 1852, Commander Edward A. Inglefield arrived at Beechey along with the physician Dr. Peter Sutherland, and John Hartwell's graves was opened, damaging his coffin, and Hartnell's memorial plaque fell off his that was like placed on his coffin lid was removed. Now basically during a later expedition, a searcher named Thomas Morgan died aboard the vessel North Star on May 22nd in 1854, and he was also buried alongside these 3 other graves of the Franklin crew members. So now there's 4 graves. All right, you gotta remember this. Now there's 4 people buried here, 3 graves, and then the one dude, Thomas Morgan, who had died on the North vessel, which was not a part of the Franklin expedition. Now in the 1980s, during 2 separate expeditions to Beechey, Canadian forensic anthropologist Dr. Owen Beatty examined the 3 bodies and found them externally remarkably well preserved. So basically these things were like still perfectly new, like they were basically just died, you know what I mean? Autopsies determined that lung disease and lead poisoning were among the probable causes of death. Basically stuff to survive on. They brought them in these tins which had lead and basically caused them to have lead poisoning, which was the thought to be the thing that actually killed them. Later studies would suggest that the unique water distillation system used by the ships was a major source of lead poisoning. So, end of the day, a lot of researchers are just thinking that lead poisoning was the thing that killed these guys, but it took a whole more than 100 years. You know what I mean? It took more than 100 years to even figure out what actually happened to these guys. And that's it. That's the whole mysterious locations, lost locations, iceberg, whatever you want to call it. Shout out to the dude that made this. I'm gonna tag the original iceberg image down below.
And that is it. The entire Lost Locations iceberg done. Let me know what your favorite entry was in the comments below, and let me know if there's any that you wanted me to go more in depth into, because I'll make a separate video just for that. And if you got this far, I appreciate it a ton. This was a super long video for me, so if you got this far, I really appreciate it. I got another iceberg looking out. It's about to start soon, probably like honestly maybe before I even drop this. It's the Psychological Experiments iceberg, so if you haven't checked that out, other than that, make sure you do all the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, comment, all that. Other than that, man, appreciate you guys. Thank you. Stay dangerous. Love y'all. Catch you later.